Chapter 242. Everyone looked at each other for a while, and after a while, they began to speak one after another. The supreme divinity mystic rock has been raised by the divinity for tens of thousands of years. This dragon has committed grave sins. We cannot let it off easily. That's right. It's a dragon. Today we work together to get the supreme divinity's golden lotus to take it down. If we don't punish it now, who knows what evil it will do in the future? But we can't hurt it. Why don't we hand it over to the supreme divinity? No, the supreme divinity has always been soft-hearted. What if this black dragon deceives the supreme divinity and she lets it go? The deities were silent for a while and looked at the black dragon with disdain. Scapegoat dragon. What does this have to do with me? Why don't we send it to the Dragon Valley? The person on the right suddenly said. No. The person on the left immediately objected. Isn't sending it to the Dragon Valley releasing a tiger back into the mountains? The dragon race had always been self-centered. They would not care about this matter. Send it to the Dragon Abyss in the Dragon Valley. As soon as he finished speaking, the eyes of everyone in the hall lit up. That's great. That's right. Hasn't the supreme divinity in the Dragon Abyss been looking for a male dragon of the same race for the past 1,000 years? Sending this black dragon over is perfect. He has just ascended. The supreme divinity will definitely be pleased. That's right. The supreme divinity is very powerful. This black dragon will not be able to do anything to her. Since that's the case, it's decided. Hurry up and send it away. The supreme divinity is about to preach. Don't let him see this dragon. Wait. What do you want? The black dragon suddenly had a bad feeling. It wanted to rush out, but was trapped by the golden lotus. It could not exert any strength. Let me go. The deities ignored it. Two of them even walked over quickly. Each of them cast a spell and lifted the black dragon trapped in the golden lotus. Then they walked out. The black dragon could not move at all. It could only be pulled along with the golden lotus. I'm warning you. Let go of me. Otherwise, you'll suffer when I come out. The two of them turned a deaf ear to it and dragged it impatiently towards an array. In a flash, the few of them left the Ling Time Mountain and arrived at another world. The weather was getting hotter, and they were surrounded by withered grass and trees. The two of them pulled the black dragon and flew for a while before stopping in front of a huge volcano. The ground beneath their feet was covered in lava. The two of them tossed the black dragon down from the clouds and untied the golden lotus on the black dragon's body. Then they turned around and flew away. It was as if they were running away from something. In an instant, they had disappeared. The black dragon lost its balance and almost fell into the ground again. Fortunately, Shun-Ing, who had been following by its side, pulled it up in time to prevent its face from hitting the ground. Thank you, exalted goddess. The black dragon thanked her with a bitter expression. But, exalted goddess, can you not pull my tail next time? Half of it was already gone. It really hurt. All right. He had gotten used to it. The black dragon rubbed his tail, feeling wronged. He glanced at Shun-Ing and asked, Exalted goddess, why didn't you beat them up just now? She promised to protect him. Because, Shun-Ing said seriously, I'm in the wrong. No matter what, she was the one who broke the rock. She emphasized, I'm a reasonable person. Moreover, she was not the one who took the blame. The black dragon. Why is your way of reasoning different from mine? Oh, greater than over equal to. Oh, the black dragon looked around. He could feel the thick dragon chi around him, making him feel extremely comfortable. Even the wound on his tail was healing automatically. He was even more confused. To a dragon, this seemed like a good place. Why did they throw me here? Didn't they say they were going to punish him? There was no reason for them to send him to such a good place. Shun-Ing shook her head. Just as she was thinking about it, a surprised voice suddenly sounded. There's a newcomer. A gust of wind blew past them. Two women, one in white and one in green, suddenly landed in front of them. They were looking in the direction of the black dragon with shining eyes. That's great. It's a male dragon. Let's send him to the Dragon Palace. All right, the other woman in green said excitedly. Supreme Divinity has been in a bad mood recently. It's just right to send him there. Yes. although he's a little ugly and lacks a tail fin. The woman in white scanned the black dragon from head to toe. Supreme Divinity probably won't mind. With that said, the two of them walked towards the black dragon. Who are you two? The black dragon immediately got up, swung his tail, and roared at the two. What do you want? Of course we want to send you to the Dragon Palace to be Supreme Divinity's husband's servant. The woman in green said matter-of-factly. Didn't you enter the Dragon Abyss for this? Husband's servant. S.B. What the hell? The black dragon felt that his male dignity was being insulted. His eyes widened and he scolded. Who wants to be someone's husband's servant? I'm a dignified dragon. How can anyone think that way? Wait a minute. Could it be that the people who captured him sent him here to make him a ghost husband servant? Could there really be a perverted supreme divinity in the Dragon Abyss who specialized in capturing male dragons? Damn, he did not want to be someone's boy toy. You black dragon, why are you so unreasonable? The woman in green glared at him with some dissatisfaction. You're already in the Dragon Abyss. Are you not here to be Supreme Divinity's husband's servant? Are you here to have fun? I was kidnapped and brought here. The black dragon was angry and annoyed. Your Supreme Divinity must be too ugly to marry. You want me to marry her? Dream on. I sell my skills, not my body. How dare you? The two girls were angry. They pointed at him and said, How dare you be rude to Supreme Divinity? The black dragon was also angry. Get lost. Otherwise, I'll eat you. With that said, he prepared to pounce on the two girls. His dragon claws were about to grab them. The two girls' expressions turned cold. Suddenly, their bodies shook, and in the next moment, they turned into two huge dragons, one green and one white. Their bodies looked even bigger than the black dragon. Huh, they were dragons too. The black dragon was stunned. Before he could react, he was directly suppressed by the two dragons. His entire body was pressed to the ground. Where did this country bumpkin come from? How dare you be rude to Supreme Divinity? You're just a crippled dragon without a tail. How dare you talk big about marrying Supreme Divinity? Dream on. To be able to be a servant and warm Supreme Divinity's bed is a blessing from my previous life. That's right. Why would Supreme Divinity fancy a lowly dragon like you? You don't know your place. Beat him up. The black dragon howled miserably as it was grabbed. For a moment, its black scales fluttered in the air. Ow! I'm going to die. I'm going to die. Exalted goddess. Exalted goddess. Save me, exalted goddess. They're dragons too. Save me. Save me. Shun-ing. Can't you learn from your mistakes? Shun-ing sighed. She turned around and grabbed the tails of the two dragons with each hand. Girls, calm down. Just as she was about to pull them off the black dragon, a cold voice came from behind. What's the commotion? Chapter 243. A scorching aura hit them in the face. The surroundings were dyed fiery red. A fire dragon formed from lava appeared in front of them. A woman dressed in red stood on the dragon's head. Her long hair was tied up high, and light blue divine power surrounded her body. She seemed to have deliberately restrained it. From afar, one could feel an oppressive power. Her aura was astonishing. What was important was her face. She was extremely beautiful, but had a rare, heroic spirit. Wow, she looked like a mature sister. The black dragon was stunned. For a moment, it forgot to struggle. Greetings, Supreme Divinity. The two dragons that were pressing down on it and rubbing the dragon's scales stopped. In an instant, they transformed back into the two cute girls from before. They obediently bowed to the person on the fire dragon, their eyes filled with joy. Supreme Divinity, you're back so soon. The woman nodded. She glanced at the two of them and slowly walked down from the fire dragon. Every move she made carried the suppressive power of a high-level divine. The moment she landed, the fire dragon behind her turned back into ordinary lava. What happened here? She glanced at the dragon's scales on the ground and frowned slightly. Supreme Divinity, the woman in green said, we found a black dragon that broke in. We wanted to send him to the Dragon Palace. But not only was he unwilling, he even spoke disrespectfully to Supreme Divinity. We were so angry that the woman's gaze fell on the black dragon. Black dragon? The black dragon did not reply. It was as if its acupuncture points had been hit. It stared blankly at the woman above it. So beautiful. The dragon chi on his body. The woman suddenly frowned. She looked at the lingering spirit chi on the black dragon's body. So he's a little dragon that just ascended from the lower realm. Forget it. She sighed and waved her hand. He must have broken in unintentionally. Let him go. But Supreme Divinity, according to the rules of the Dragon Abyss, any dragon that enters has to be tested. The girl in green wanted to say something, but was interrupted by the woman. She said sternly, I'm not one to force others to do something they don't want to do. Since he's unwilling, let him out of the Dragon Abyss. Without another word, the lava under her feet once again formed a fire dragon. She turned and flew in the direction of the hall at the foot of the volcano. Yes. The two girls bowed respectfully and waited until the red-clothed girl walked away. Only then did the two of them turn and glare at the black dragon fiercely, their faces filled with disdain. However, they did not continue to attack. Instead, they pointed at it and coldly said, "Humph. Count yourself lucky." The girl in green took a step forward and kicked the black dragon's claw. Our supreme divinity is the dragon with the highest cultivation level in the dragon clan. Furthermore, he possesses the most noble bloodline of the ancient azure dragon, and he is the dragon god of our race. You're just a mixed blood dragon from the lower realm. How dare you criticize the Divine Lord? That's right. As expected, there aren't any good dragons out there. You can't defeat the Divine Lord, so you only know how to talk behind the Divine Lord's back. This time, the Divine Lord has ordered us to let you go. If you dare to disrespect the Divine Lord again, we'll beat you up every time we see you. The two of them reprimanded the black dragon for a bit, but seeing that the black dragon didn't reply, they pointed to the right and said, "The way out is over there. Get out of the dragon abyss." After saying that, he turned around and flew away. The black dragon, on the other hand, was unusually well-behaved. He didn't retort, let alone explode in anger. He just stared blankly in the direction the group had left in, as if he had been struck dumb. "Longworm, you're still alive? Longworm? Longworm." Shining called out a few times, but the black dragon didn't react at all. He continued to stare in the direction of the volcano, as if he was frozen in place. "Hey!" Shining walked to the side of the dragon's head and waved her hand in front of his eyes. "Wake up! You haven't been beaten silly, have you? Exalted Goddess!" The black dragon suddenly jumped up and transformed back into his human form. His eyes shone like light bulbs. "Tell me, if I agree to be your servant now, do I still have a chance?" King retard. Are you a freaking masochist? Exalted Goddess, why don't we go to the Dragon Valley and ask around? I don't even know her name. Maybe I'm not going. Shun-Ing rejected him instantly. Exalted Goddess. The black dragon's entire body became listless. Tears welled up in his eyes as he hugged her leg. This is the first time I've met a girl I like. If I miss this chance, I might not get another chance in the future. Can you bear to let me not find a wife for the rest of my life? Of course I can. Did he have to be so direct? Exalted Goddess, I'll go and ask around. If she doesn't accept, we'll come back immediately. The black dragon continued to persuade her. What's more, the dragon chi here is very thick. There should be many dragons here. It would be convenient for Exalted Goddess to ask around. I'm not going. It would be better to go back to the map. Exalted Goddess, just listen to me this once. One look, and you can tell that the inside of the volcano is an important place for the dragon race. Although it looks scary on the outside, there's a whole new world inside. There might be all kinds of rare treasures and divine stones, strange flowers and fruits, rare delicacies, and the like. Exalted Goddess, are you sure? Where's she? Exalted Goddess. Exalted Goddess? Why are you standing there like a fool? Let's go. Shining waved a hand in front of her. Why didn't you say so earlier that there was food to eat? The black dragon's mouth twitched. He quickly followed her. All right, Exalted Goddess. No problem, Exalted Goddess. Please go this way, Exalted Goddess. That's the way back. Oh. Shining turned around and walked in the direction of the volcano. As she walked, she muttered to herself, "Also, I was going to break up with you and look for Chef on my own. It looks like we still have to work together for a while." What? Nanny, what did he just hear? Break up? The exalted goddess was going to set him free? No. Exalted goddess, listen to my explanation. It's not too late to break up now. Also, Longworm, why don't you change your clothes? Don't use your scales as clothes. It's fine if it's just but in the past, but now your entire lower body is naked. Won't you catch a cold? Oofed. He could vaguely see a pillar of blood spurting out, which did not fall for a long time. At the top of the Ling-Time Mountain, a white-haired elder stood beside a pool. A water mirror floated in front of him. He laughed softly and suddenly spoke. "We haven't seen each other for 10,000 years. Why are you suddenly sending me a voice transmission? Asking about someone?" A cold voice came from the water mirror in front of him. It sounded like a heavenly voice. The surface of the mirror rippled. A white-robed man's figure could be vaguely seen. The elder's smile deepened. "Who's so important? Thank you for asking personally." "A black dragon," the voice replied. "He probably just ascended recently." "Black dragon?" The elder thought for a moment. "I heard that a few days ago, a black dragon broke into the Ling-Time Mountain. It seems to be the one that destroyed my divine mystic stone not long ago. However, before the Dharma assembly began, he was sent to the Dragon Abyss for punishment by the gods who came to listen to the Dharma assembly. Could it be that you are friends with this dragon?" The person in the mirror frowned. "You don't have to worry. Others may not know, but you should know what that person in the Dragon Abyss is like. I'm sure he won't make things difficult for him." The elder comforted. "If you really have something urgent, I'll send someone to get him back." Chapter 244. "No need," the person in the mirror replied. "We're just old acquaintances." I suddenly thought of asking. The image in the mirror started to fade and was about to disappear. "Wait." The old man seemed to recall something and hurriedly said, "You're not still at the 1,000-Feet Mountain, are you?" The person in the mirror did not reply. It was as if she was admitting it. "AI, why do you have to do this?" The old man sighed. "I think that exalted God Qianyu is not lying to you. He really doesn't know. Why do you have to stay there and force him to tell you? Even if he really doesn't know." The person in the mirror lowered her voice, as if she had been wronged. "She will definitely appear. You." The old man was speechless. A moment later, he shook his head. "Forget it. I hope you can really find the person you're looking for." The other party did not reply. The mirror slowly shook and turned into a stream of water that fell into the pool below. The old man stroked his beard and sighed again. "AI people at this age. Dragon Palace." The woman on the high seat looked at the messenger with some surprise. "Black dragon? Is it the little black dragon who just ascended to the divine underworld in the Dragon Abyss?" "Supreme divinity, it is indeed him. Didn't he say he was unwilling just now? Why is he here now?" Long Zhen frowned, and a look of displeasure flashed across her face. "Is he afraid that I will blame him? Tell him that I will not make things difficult for him. I don't need a husband like him." "Yes." The maidservant was about to leave when another lady standing beside her stopped her. "Wait." The lady cupped her fists towards Long Zhen. "Supreme divinity, all these years, we've tried all sorts of methods. No matter how high the cultivation of the dragon race was, we've all failed. Perhaps young master's matter has nothing to do with cultivation. This black dragon has just ascended. Perhaps we'll bump into him. There's no harm in trying, right? But he just ascended and he's a black dragon." Long Zhen hesitated. "Supreme divinity, we can wait, but young master can't." Her expression turned even more serious. A moment later, she sighed and turned to the maidservant. "Forget it. Let's try. Bring him to the dragon pool. I'll be there in a while." "Yes." Only then did the maid leave. He agreed. The black dragon couldn't believe his ears. This was the first time he had fallen in love with a girl. It was a pity that the start was not very good. He thought that the other party would definitely be angry with him, but it turned out that he was just trying his luck and begging the exalted deity to let him come. He didn't expect the other party to agree immediately. He wasn't dreaming, right? When he thought of that woman just now, although he was just a husband's servant with no status, at least he had the opportunity to get close to her. Perhaps they would develop feelings over time and become official. Exalted, exalted goddess, exalted goddess. He tugged at Shun Ying's sleeve excitedly. She agreed. Did you hear that? She agreed. Oh. Shun Ying, who was sitting in the living room, was pulled by him. She took a bite of the fruit in her hand, which she hadn't eaten for a long time. She held the plate full of fruit in her other hand tightly and moved it to the side. Cherish food and stay away from the love brain. In the past, when he was a flood dragon, the other flood dragons said that it was very difficult to chase after a wife and that he had to be prepared to risk his life. Now, it seemed that it wasn't that difficult. Ha ha ha. He was indeed a special dragon. Please follow me to the rising dragon pool. The supreme divinity wants to see you, the maidservant said. So soon. The black dragon was shocked. He didn't expect to see his sweetheart so soon. Good. He was about to ask Shining to get up when a maidservant added, the supreme divinity has something to ask you. She wants to see you alone. This. The black dragon hurriedly looked at Shining. He hesitated for a moment before saying tentatively, Exalted goddess, why don't you rest first and I'll be back soon? Oh, Shining responded, still munching on her fruit seriously. I'll be back soon. Seeing that she didn't object, the black dragon immediately followed the maidservant. Shining didn't mind. She hadn't eaten for a long time. She was so hungry. The fruit was a little sour. It wasn't as good as the ones from Invincible Sect. She kept feeling like she missed Chef. The maidservant led the black dragon straight in the direction of the rear hall. It was as if they had entered an isolated area, and the surrounding temperature was getting higher and higher. Even the dragon race could feel a trace of scorching heat. The maidservant only stopped when they reached a passageway and gestured for him to enter. The black dragon didn't mind. He thanked her politely, which was rare. Then, he turned and walked into the passageway. The air was getting hotter and hotter. The deeper he went, the hotter it got. The black dragon couldn't help but feel confused. Why did the extremely beautiful supreme divinity ask him to come to a place like this? The next moment, his eyes opened up. This seemed to be the center of a volcano. There was a pool of lava in front of him. From time to time, pillars of fire would shoot up from it. Long Jun stood beside the pool of lava. Compared to her formal attire earlier, she was wearing a thin shirt. She looked even more exquisite. The black dragon took one look and felt his body stiffen. His heart seemed to be cursed. It was thumping nonstop. So beautiful. Suddenly, a hot current was about to burst out. He hurriedly tilted his head back to hold it in. He had a nosebleed. He had to leave a good impression on his future wife. That was what he thought, but he couldn't help but look at her. Speaking of which, he seemed to be here to be her servant. Then, it was normal for him to look at her a few more times. You're here. Long Jun glanced at him. Her voice was still cold. Like before, she nodded and said, Come here. So fast. Air. The black dragon froze. He tried to get rid of the messy images in his head. You're looking for me? The black dragon took a few steps closer to her. The more he looked, the faster his heart beat. His head was buzzing. Yes. Longjun nodded. She still had that serious expression on her face. She scanned him from head to toe and asked, I want to confirm with you again. Are you really willing to be my servant? Of course. He nodded vigorously. Since that's the case. Longjun looked him up and down. A hint of worry flashed across her face. There are some things I need to tell you first. Once you become my servant, you can't go back on your word. You also have to stay in the Dragon Abyss. You can't leave without permission. The black dragon suddenly had the urge to smooth her brows. He subconsciously replied, Okay, I will teach you a special cultivation technique. You have to practice it with me. You can't slack off. Are you willing? Yes. This cultivation technique is special. You have to practice it for at least 2 hours every day without stopping. Can you endure it? Yes. You can't be too far away from me when you practice it. You also have to change back to your original form. I'll listen to you. In that case, she seemed to heave a sigh of relief. She scanned him from head to toe. Take off your clothes. Okay. A while later, what? Chapter 245. The Black Dragon Froze. Does she have to be so direct? Your clothes are not made of dragon scales. It's useless even if you wear them. Anyway, you have to take them off. Longjun said seriously. Oh, since the girl had taken the initiative to speak, the black dragon gritted his teeth and took off his shirt, leaving only his pants on, revealing his muscular body. Longjun glanced at his long pants and frowned. Take off your pants too. That's not good, right? The black dragon's face turned red. He instinctively grabbed his pants. If he took them off, they would be locked up. Forget it. Let's do it. Longjun saw his hesitation and did not rush him. Let's begin. With that, she reached out a hand to him. The black dragon's entire body turned as red as a shrimp. His heart felt like it was about to jump out of his chest. He could not help but reach out his trembling hand. It looked like he was about to grab this jade-like hand. Longjun suddenly turned her palm and grabbed his wrist. Then, she swung her hand forcefully. What? The black dragon only heard a gust of wind beside his ears. His entire body was thrown into the air. A huge dragon aura pressed down on him, forcing him back into his dragon form. Were all dragon ladies so direct? He didn't have time to react, and a scorching aura immediately hit him in the face. He looked down subconsciously, only to see a huge pool of lava below him. The boiling lava was bubbling, and he was falling straight into the middle. The black dragon jumped in fright and screamed. For a moment, he forgot about the cloud-soaring sorcery. What was going on? I'm going to die. I'm going to die. Just as he was about to fall into the lava, a burst of light suddenly flashed, and he stopped less than 5 feet away from the lava. Rumbling sounds could be heard as something rose up from the lava below him. There was a huge ball on top of it, and it rose to the position of the formation, pressing against his dragon abdomen. The black dragon did not have time to react. His body seemed to be out of his control. He wrapped himself tightly around the ball. It's getting late. You can familiarize yourself with its aura first. Longjun's worried voice came from below. Tomorrow, I will teach you how to hatch it. Please try your best and hatch my child as soon as possible. Hatch? What? He looked down and saw a snow-white object stuck tightly to his belly. It was round and big, with a faint dragon aura, and there were layers of dragon patterns on it. This was a dragon egg. All he felt was a ding in his head, and all the fan bubbles disappeared with a pop. Only then did he realize what had happened. Could it be that she was looking for her husband just to incubate eggs? And it was her son. W*******, 2 hours later in the front hall. Exalted Goddess. A figure pounced on Shun-Ing, who was sitting on a chair. His voice was filled with grief. Even Shun-Ing, who had eaten 5 plates of fruits, was shocked. She subconsciously lifted her leg and stepped on his face, causing his face to sink into the ground. What the hell? It hurts, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts. Exalted Goddess, it's me, it's me. The person on the ground hurriedly slapped the ground and begged for mercy. Longworm? Shun-Ing lifted her foot and glanced at the disheveled man who was pulling his head out of the ground. She had only been eating fruits. How did he end up like this? She looked down. Why was his pants torn? Was it cool? What's wrong with you? The black dragon was stunned. Suddenly, he remembered something sad and became listless. Exalted Goddess, so Longjun is that supreme divinity. She doesn't like me at all. Sob, 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 oh. Did anyone doubt that? The more he spoke, the sadder he became. He wanted to hug Shun-Ying's leg for comfort, but was kicked away again. She took me in as her husband just to incubate her eggs. Oh, she even wanted me to incubate for 4 hours every day until they hatch. Oh, I didn't expect her to have an egg. I don't have a chance anymore. Sob, 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 sob. I'm so sad. Oh, I heard that the egg hasn't hatched even after hundreds of thousands of years. Maybe I'll have to incubate for hundreds of thousands of years too. The key is someone else's son. Oh, that's not all. That egg is huge and heavy. There's another dragon's aura on it. I'm actually not her only egg-incubating dragon. Air, is that what you care about? Exalted Goddess. Seeing that Shun-Ing had no intention of comforting him, the black dragon's heart ached even more. I've been gone for so long. Don't you have anything to say? He looked up pitifully. His expression was one of comfort, concern, and hug. The corner of Shun Ying's mouth twitched. She sighed and said, "Long worm. Pitiful, pitiful, pitiful. Was the egg you incubated white?" "Yes." The black dragon paused. "It was about the same size as your human form. The one with silver patterns on it?" "Yes." "How did the exalted goddess know?" Then, Shunning pointed outside the door. "Was it the same as the one behind you?" "Huh?" Black Dragon was taken aback. She subconsciously turned around and saw a huge egg rolling in from outside the door. It was heading in their direction at an extremely fast speed. Dragon, dragon, dragon egg. The black dragon's eyes widened. "Why is it? Ouch." Before he could finish speaking, the dragon egg seemed to have rolled too fast and directly knocked into the black dragon's body. With a thud, it knocked him away and stopped steadily in front of Shun-Ing. Shun-Ing scanned the egg, which was as tall as a human. It was indeed a huge egg, but here was the problem: longworm. She poked at the eggshell and asked seriously, "Can this be eaten?" The smell was so familiar. The black dragon finally reacted. He climbed up from the ground. "Exalted goddess, don't joke around. But how did this egg get here?" He looked around carefully, but did not find anyone else's aura. Dragon eggs cannot leave the incubation pool for too long. Exalted goddess, what are you doing? You really want to eat it?" The black dragon hurriedly grabbed onto a certain person who was climbing up the egg. He held onto her hands tightly. "Exalted goddess, I beg you. This really can't be eaten. You can't be eaten." The person who was about to climb up the egg asked, "Just one bite." Not even one bite. This was her son, not an ordinary egg. "Wait, you can't bite it, exalted goddess." Roar suddenly. An angry dragon roar could be heard. The ground shook. "Who is it? Who dares to kidnap my son?" The black dragon's heart sank. It's over. Not far away, a huge red dragon silhouette shot into the sky. The entire sky seemed to have been set ablaze. It turned into a sea of red. Following that, dragons flew up from all directions. They seemed to be searching for something. That was Longjun. I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die. Oh, greater than over equal to greater than over equal to oh. Chapter 246. The black dragon's heart tightened. Seeing that there were more and more dragons in the sky, he hurriedly raised his head and shouted, "Supreme divinity, the egg is here." The angry dragon in the sky paused and then looked towards the front hall. When she saw the egg at the side, her eyes widened. She immediately recognized the person on the ground. "It's you." She opened her mouth and let out a dragon roar. Instantly, an overwhelming dragon aura pressed down on them. This was the black dragon's first time facing the supreme divinity's aura head-on. Instantly, he felt a metallic taste in his mouth and almost vomited blood. Knowing that she was angry, he hurriedly explained, "Supreme divinity, you've misunderstood. I didn't steal the dragon egg." The dragon in the sky flew down. The other dragons all transformed back into human forms and landed in the yard in front of them. "I don't know why the egg rolled here. I was just about to send it back," the black dragon hurriedly explained. "But don't worry, the dragon egg is fine." Crack! Before he could finish speaking, he heard something shattering beside him. He suddenly had a bad premonition. He turned to look and saw that the originally pure white eggshell had started to crack from the top. In the blink of an eye, the entire dragon egg was covered in wildfire. More and more of it was spreading. A certain foodie was standing beside the egg, holding onto the top piece of eggshell. The black dragon, exalted goddess, can't you trick me one last time? Little dragon. Longjun screamed. Her eyes widened as she stared at the cracked egg. Instantly, she exploded with anger. "I'll kill you." With that, she transformed back into her dragon form. As if she had gone mad with anger, she forgot all about her spells and talents. She opened her mouth and bit down on the two of them, along with the entire front hall. "Wait, supreme divinity." The black dragon wanted to say something, but it was too late. The sky filled with dragon aura pressed him to the ground. There was a rumbling sound all around. The front hall collapsed. Sharp dragon teeth pierced through the roof and descended from the sky. They were about to swallow the two people in the house. Xining, who was below, reached out and caught the longest dragon tooth above her head. The dragon's mouth remained open, unable to move. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't close it. She swung her hand to the side, and with a rumble, the giant dragon was thrown to the ground. She pressed her hand on the dragon's head. Longzhen was shocked. She wanted to struggle, but she found that the hand on her head was extremely heavy. Her entire body was suppressed, and she could not move. "Calm down." An indifferent voice came from above his head, with a slightly lazy tone. Only then did Longzhen see the woman in front of her. She paused, but realized that the woman was not looking at her. Instead, she was looking at the cracked egg beside her. He didn't know if it was because the other party was too calm, but for some reason, the anger he felt from losing his son suddenly disappeared. He followed her gaze and looked at the dragon egg. The egg was still cracking, and the cracks were like a spider web. Finally, with a crack, a piece of eggshell fell off, and a golden light shone from the egg. As more and more eggshell fell, the golden light became brighter and brighter. When the eggshell completely fell off, dazzling golden light spread in all directions. Even the sky that was dyed red by the lava turned a bit golden. This is... Longzhen looked at the center of the golden light in disbelief. The dragon egg had successfully hatched. In the center, where the golden light was the brightest, a figure slowly formed. In a short while, a figure only as tall as Shun Ying's waist appeared in midair. The next moment, the golden light finally dimmed. Shuning subconsciously reached out and caught the falling figure. Looking down, she saw a child who looked about 6 or 7 years old. His eyes were closed, and he lay naked in her arms. He was extremely skinny, and his cheeks were slightly sunken in. He was obviously not as nutritious as the giant egg from before. "Here, give it to your son." Xining turned and pushed the child towards the dragon's head. Longzhen's reaction was extremely fast. In an instant, she returned to her human form and received the child. She looked at the child in her arms excitedly and nervously. Longer, you're finally out." She hurriedly took out a long robe and wrapped it around the child's body. She looked at the child in her arms carefully, and a look of confusion flashed across her face. "He can already transform. Why is he so weak?" "Maybe he's been holding it in for too long," Xining suddenly replied. She waved the piece of eggshell in her hand. Longzhen paused, then reacted. She immediately understood what Xining meant. "I'm sorry. Longzhen has misunderstood you. Longer was too weak. There was no way he could break out of the eggshell on his own. He could only break it from the outside. But the dragon race had always been strong. There was no one who could not break out of the eggshell. The strange thing was that her son could transform into a human form in the egg. Why couldn't he break out of the eggshell naturally? And looking at how weak he was now, if he broke out of the eggshell any later, he might. Longzhen did not dare to think further. As she channeled God power into the child in her arms, she looked at Shun Ying seriously. "Thank you, fellow Taoist, for saving my son's life. How should I address you, benefactor?" "Oh, my name is Shun Ying," Xining replied casually. She continued to look at the eggshell in her hands thoughtfully. "Fellow Taoist Shun." Longzhen looked at her son gratefully. "If fellow Taoist doesn't mind, can you stay in the Dragon Palace for a few more days? Let me thank you on behalf of Longer." "There's no need." She glanced at the child in her arms. "I still need to find someone." "Oh, who are you looking for?" "Perhaps Long Yuan, can help." Really? "Of course. I'm looking for Exalted Goddess." Before they could finish, the black dragon suddenly interrupted. "There's no hurry to find someone. You two can talk, but can you not step on me? I'm still on the ground." Shunning, Longzhen, when did he get on the ground? The two of them moved their feet. Longzhen thought of her son in her arms. "Fellow Taoist Shun, my son is too weak now. Let me bring him down to recuperate. I'll tell you more about the search later. All right?" "All right." Xining nodded. Longzhen turned around with her son in her arms. She gave some instructions to the maidservants outside and was about to carry her son to the back palace. She stopped in her tracks and looked down. Her son, who had been sleeping soundly a moment ago, had opened his eyes at some point in time. He reached out a small hand from her arms and grabbed onto Shun Ying's sleeve tightly. Long air, this is... Shun Ying's sleeve tightened. She paused. What? She was about to retract her hand when the child held on even tighter. He opened his mouth anxiously, as if using all his strength to make a sound. A moment later, he said, Mas, shining Longjun the Black Dragon. What was going on? The three of them were stunned. Even Longjun looked confused. She did not understand why her son would suddenly call him master, but she did not feel conflicted. She smiled and said, It looks like my son is fated with you. I have to prepare a big gift in advance. The Black Dragon could not help but say, This kid really knows how to talk. He knew how to suck up to someone powerful. Shining frowned. She leaned closer to take a closer look at the skinny child in front of her. Suddenly, she said, Chef? The child's eyes lit up. It was as if thousands of stars were shining in them. It really was him. She tugged at his little arm and tilted her head. Can you still cook? The child, who had just woken up, paused. In the next moment, his little face puffed up. Unlike the weak master he had called her just now, he replied clearly, Yes. What a good chef. Longjun, the Black Dragon. Speaking of which, what did she say just now? Why did he not understand a single word she said? Chapter 247. 4 days later. Chef. Master. What's going on? I don't know. Perhaps it's as the God Fiend said. The divine underworld is the highest level of the three realms. It's different from the mortal and immortal realms. So it makes sense that there would be some changes. Is there a way to solve this? I'm afraid it'll be difficult. This is the divine underworld after all. Perhaps only when we return to the mortal and immortal realms will it be the same as before. Oh, then what do we do? I will try my best to be the same as before. Oh, then good luck. Shining nodded and patted the little being on the shoulder. The divine world actually doesn't have small animals like pigs, cows, and sheep. I can't even get used to eating them. Yes, master. I Ching, who had to move 2 stools to reach the stove, nodded hard. He held the spatula with both hands and waved it with difficulty. This dragon abyss spirit swine has firm meat. It will definitely be able to taste like pork. I'll leave it to you. Yes. Oh yes, add more spiciness. I like spicy food. Yes, master. No problem, master. He waved the spatula even harder. The Black Dragon watching. What on earth were these two doing? Wasn't that Longjun's son who was still recuperating? Why did he come here the moment he was able to walk? Why did he bring his own pots and pans and ingredients? And what's with the exalted goddess? It's fine if he doesn't have any sense of shame, but why is he holding a bowl and watching? He's almost drooling. What's with that well-practiced commanding tone? Look carefully. That person who's about to be buried in the pot is a child. A child. Doesn't your conscience hurt? Master, it's done. I Ching finally stopped waving the spatula. His 2 little hands struggled to pick up the plate that was wider than his body. All right, let's eat. Shining picked up the other dishes and was about to go out when she saw the Black Dragon standing at the door with a dumbfounded look on his face. Long Worm, come and help me carry the dishes. Oh, the Black Dragon subconsciously responded before walking in. With a stomach full of questions, he picked up the other dishes on the stove. Just as he was about to step out of the door, he noticed that a certain kid was standing on a tall stool, staring at the ground some distance away. His little face was scrunched up. Is he unable to get down? The Black Dragon hurriedly put down the vegetables in his hands and reached out to him. Why don't I carry? You get down. Before he could finish speaking, he suddenly raised his little hand and made a hand seal. In an instant, a white immortal sword appeared under his feet. With a whoosh, the sword flew in front of him. In the next moment, a soft but somewhat serious voice came from the room. Master, try the stir-fried spirit swine. The Black Dragon, who was about to reach out with both hands, do all the children of the dragon race know how to fly swords the moment they are born? The Black Dragon froze for a while, then picked up the dishes on the stove and walked into the room. The 2 of them were already seated in the house. Perhaps because she was starving, Shining was devouring more than 10 dishes on the table at lightning speed. delicious, 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 and Chef, who was sitting on the other side, was holding an empty bowl. He reached out to the bucket of rice beside him, but because of his height, his pair of short hands could not reach it no matter how he stretched out. His little face frowned. He simply stood on the chair and grabbed the bucket of rice. After filling the bowl with difficulty, he turned his hand and very naturally handed it to the person beside him. Master Rice. Oh, a certain someone took it very shamelessly and ate noisily. The black dragon. Why did he feel that this scene was getting weirder the more he looked at it? Did he put it the other way around? 2 hours later, a certain someone who was finally full lay on the table like mud. Indeed, it was necessary to have a chef when going out. This spirit swine tastes good. If we can't find beef or mutton in the divine realm, it's not bad to find some seafood that we haven't eaten before. Yes, master. No problem, master. A certain someone who was still standing on the chair took out a small notebook from somewhere and wrote the word seafood on it. Oh yes, there's also small animals like rabbit meat, chicken meat, duck meat, and so on. A certain someone hugged the little notebook and continued to write, jotting it down. Don't worry, master. Although ingredients in the divine realm are hard to find, and there are no ordinary animals like these in the immortal and mortal realms, I will definitely work hard to find spirit mounts that taste similar to these. All the best. I have high hopes for you. Yes, master. The black dragon became more and more confused. Wait, why was this conversation so strange? Wasn't this child just born? Why did he look like he was very familiar with the mortal and immortal realms? And from the time they started cooking, the two of them had a natural and familiar attitude. From your words, why do you sound like you've known each other for a long time? Yes. Chef straightened his little body and said with some pride, I'm Master's only disciple. He specially emphasized the word only. After thinking for a while, he added, starting from the 3 azure realms. 3 azure realms. The black dragon's eyes widened as he looked him up and down. Stop joking. He was a natural dragon. How could he go to the lower realm? Let's put it this way, he said with a serious expression. My Dao name is I Ching. I Ching? I Ching. The black dragon stood up abruptly. You're the I Ching that exalted goddess is looking for. Isn't that invincible sex? Aren't you Longzhen's son? His little face frowned. Actually, he didn't know either. He turned to look at the person beside him. Shining then got up from the table and looked at Chef, who was several sizes smaller. She said, I forgot to ask, how did you become like this? This matter. I don't know what happened. I Ching shook his little head. After I was transported to the divine realm, I was in that egg. My body suddenly became very weak. Later, I sensed Master's aura and chased after her. Only then did Master let me out. Could it be possession? The black dragon's eyes widened. Ouch! Before he could finish speaking, Shining hit the back of his head with her chopsticks. No, that's right. This is indeed my body. I Ching nodded affirmatively. Apart from becoming like this, my cultivation, spirit root, and meridians are the same as before. This is my previous body, the black dragon. If it wasn't, then it wasn't. Why did she hit him? Then, what about Longzhen's original son? I don't know. He shook his head. When I was in the dragon egg, I was the only one inside. There was no one else's aura. Then what happened? The black dragon looked confused. The more he listened, the more confused he became. That was clearly a dragon egg. It couldn't have been empty from the beginning. I Ching fell silent. He didn't know what was going on either. Shining poured herself a cup of tea. Suddenly, she nudged the black dragon beside her and said, Long Worm, go and call that person over. Who? The black dragon paused. Shining pointed at Chef. His mother. Oh, indeed, if anyone knew about this, it would only be Longzhen. But, although he understood, why did it sound like she was scolding him? Chapter 248. Longzhen arrived very quickly. I Ching had just cleared the table when the black dragon brought her in. Sun Long. The moment they entered the room, Longzhen's cold expression changed. She smiled like a loving mother and appeared in front of I Ching in a flash. She looked him up and down. Why are you here? You just hatched, and you're weak. You've only just woken up. You shouldn't be running around. Even if you want to cultivate as soon as possible, you don't have to be in such a hurry to meet your future master, right? She adjusted his clothes and reached out to carry him. How are you? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Tell me. I Ching's expression froze. He hurriedly took a few steps back. After putting some distance between them, he cupped his fists and bowed like an adult. Supreme Divinity Longjun. Longjun paused, then smiled even wider. You're my son indeed. So obedient. She looked proud. But you don't have to do that in front of me. Supreme Divinity Longjun. I Ching tried his best to look serious. Unfortunately, his childish face looked out of place. I might not be your son. Longjun froze. Silly child, what are you talking about? She continued smiling. Don't joke with me. Supreme Divinity, I'm not joking. I Ching said respectfully. My name is I Ching. I'm the only disciple of the invincible sect in the immortal world. He turned to look at the person who was sprawled lazily on the table. Please forgive me, Supreme Divinity. I woke up a few days ago and did not have time to explain before I went back to sleep. Actually, I did not want to be her disciple. She's my master, Shuning. Immortal world. Master? I Ching told her everything that had happened. We came to the divine world to look for someone. I don't know why I entered that dragon egg and became like this, but I'm really not your son. Longjun was stunned. She looked at her grown-up son and Shuning beside him. Surprisingly, there was no sadness or anger on her face. Instead, she smiled at him. I see. AI, why didn't you say so earlier? The more she smiled, the happier she became. She glared at him as if she was complaining. I was wondering why you've been so cold to me these past few days. Just as he recovered a little, he disappeared without a trace. So that's how it is. You still remember what happened in your previous life? This time, it was the other's turn to be a loss. Previous life? What does that mean? Long air. She turned to look at I Ching's face. Her eyes darkened, filled with complicated emotions. It was as if she was looking at something else through him. She did not speak for a long time. This face, it was clearly. I Ching frowned and called out, Supreme Divinity Longjun. Longjun paused for a moment before reacting. She smiled awkwardly and continued, There's no need to doubt it. You are indeed my son. As if she had thought of something, she clenched her fists and hesitated for a while before saying in a low voice, When you were born, you were different from others. The dragon energy on the dragon egg was sparse, and the dragon soul was extremely weak. I heard that the power of reincarnation can nourish your dragon soul. So, you sent him into samsara? Shen Ying's eyes narrowed. Just like Shorty? Yes. She nodded. After I sent his dragon soul into samsara, I searched for male dragons in the clan and nourished the body inside the dragon egg with dragon energy every day. I had planned to summon his soul back after his dragon soul had recovered. But I did not expect you to cultivate your mortal body into an immortal body and come to the divine world. Everyone who goes through samsara will forget their past lives. Even if I summon your dragon soul back to the divine world, you would have to go through samsara again. That's why I thought you had forgotten about it too. She looked at I Ching again, and something flashed across her eyes. But I did not expect you to come back so early. What's more, you ascended directly from the divine world. Whether it's the dragon body in the egg or your immortal body after reincarnation, they are both your bodies. It's normal for them to be connected. Perhaps because of this, you have become one with the dragon body in the egg. Two became one. Shen Ying and I Ching exchanged a look. But they did not ascend here. They were smuggled here by god fiends. So, you are indeed my long heir. Longjun stepped forward and looked lovingly at the shrunken I Ching. She exuded the glow of an old mother. I personally sent your dragon soul down to the lower realm. I cannot be wrong. I Ching stiffened. He did not know if he was not used to her overly enthusiastic attitude, but he took another step back. That meant that his previous body had become one with the egg. Was he a human or a dragon now? Why can I still sense the immortal bones in my body, even though my body has become like this? His cultivation level, his spirit root, and even his sword intent were the same as before. There is no dragon power. Longjun's smile deepened. You have never sensed dragon chi before, have you? Dragon chi? I Ching hesitated. He subconsciously released his divine perception. Immediately, an unfamiliar aura surged in. He felt his sea of consciousness ring and something open. His body flashed with golden light. The next moment, the little being on the ground disappeared, and a shining golden dragon appeared in the room. In an instant, it broke the roof, and the broken tiles fell to the ground. Master, I Ching subconsciously turned to block Shen Ying's head. This caused the room to become even more ruined. In an instant, everything fell to the ground. Everything happened too quickly. By the time they reacted, only Long Worm and Long Zhun were left on the ground, their heads covered in dust. The giant dragon had already retreated a short distance away and was carefully coiling around Shen. Although the dragon was not as tall as Black Dragon and Long Zhun, its entire body seemed to be bathed in sunlight. It was blinding. Gold, gold, golden dragon. The Black Dragon completely ignored the dust. He opened his mouth and looked at the dragon opposite him in shock. Long Zhun was shocked too. She did not expect her son to be a golden dragon. No wonder back then legend had it that golden dragons were the royalty of the dragon race. They were far more powerful than the other dragons. But golden dragons had only appeared in ancient times. I Ching was shocked too. He activated all the immortal chi in his body and found that it had become even thicker and more shocking. Could this be divine power? Chef! Shen raised her head. It really was a dragon. Only then did I Ching recover from the shock of his sudden transformation. He tried to use a spell to change back to his human form, but his body shrank and instantly turned into a small dragon that was as tall as a human. Master, I'm not familiar with the control of divine power yet. I can't change back so quickly. He had not gotten used to his dragon form and did not know how to transform. He tried a few times but could not change back. He could only stand on his two hind legs and pretend that he was walking. Oh, Shen did not care about this. She only looked at his thin dragon claws. Chef, Master, can you still cook when you're like this? The two dragons. Are you only concerned about your own food? Fu asterisk K. A moment later, a resolute reply came. Yes. As if to prove it, a certain dragon turned and ran into the kitchen that had not collapsed. He grabbed the spatula with one claw, the Black Dragon. What happened to the royalty of the dragon race? Long Zhun, I might have given birth to a fake son. Chapter 249. The son that Long Zhun had been looking forward to for hundreds of thousands of years was finally back. What's more, he was the legendary golden dragon. Long Zhun felt that this was perfect if only he did not like to cook so much. She looked at the golden dragon who had been busy in the kitchen since noon. Long Zhun wanted to stop him. After all, he had just turned back into a dragon and needed more time to cultivate. But because he was doing this out of filial piety towards Master, she could not say anything. So before she knew it, she was already sitting at the table and eating with him. Straight face, Master, have some tea. I Ching, who was still in the form of a little golden dragon, handed a cup of tea to someone who had just finished her afternoon tea. Oh, Shen accepted it out of habit. She looked at Chef, who was sitting obediently at the side like a cartoon dragon, pressing his claws together. She finally remembered something important. Chef, Master, can't you turn back into a human? I Ching's dragon head drooped. Not yet. Although the Black Dragon had already told him how to turn back into a human, he was still not familiar with this body. What's more, every time he used his god power, he would feel strangely tired. He just broke out a shell. His body is weak. It's normal that he can't turn back into a human, Long Zhun explained. Are dragons that weak? Shen asked. Not really. Long Zhun frowned. Maybe he's different from other dragons. Oh, Master. I Ching suddenly recalled something. I remember that ever since I entered that egg, there seemed to be an aura suppressing me. I could not break out. Also, he frowned. The more I resisted, the weaker my body became. It was very likely because of this that he turned into this child. There's such a thing. Long Zhun was shocked. She stood up and looked him up and down. What aura is that? I Ching shook his head. I don't know either. I know, Shining suddenly said. The three dragons were shocked and turned to look at her in unison. What did she mean? Shining took out a white object from her side. Is it this? Everyone was stunned. Even Long Zhun looked curiously at the thing in her hand. It was the piece of eggshell that she had dug out from the dragon egg a few days ago. Exalted Goddess, what aura is there on it? The black dragon took a closer look. There was nothing on the eggshell. He's inside. She reached out and tore off the layer of membrane on the inside of the eggshell. Halfway through, a black chi suddenly flashed out of the eggshell. It was extremely fast. Just as it was about to rush out, Shining reached out and grabbed it back. In the next moment, a black, smoke-like gas appeared in her hand. It was twisting desperately as if it were alive. It had a cold and gloomy aura, and it would occasionally let out a shrill scream like the cry of a ghost. The aura became fainter and fainter in her hands, and in a short while, it disappeared. This is the yin chi of a ghost immortal. Long Zhun was shocked. Her eyes widened, and she stood up abruptly. How can this be? I've been taking care of my son's dragon egg all these years. How can there be a ghost immortal's yin chi hidden inside? What's a ghost immortal? Shining tilted her head. Long Zhun frowned, her expression exceptionally dark. Ghost immortals are deviant ghosts from the underworld who cultivate to become immortals. Their cultivation methods are very special, and their cultivation techniques are very strange. Many divine races can't do anything to them, but their whereabouts are always uncertain, and they won't easily come to divine territory. Deviant ghosts becoming immortals? It was not just I Ching. Even the black dragon was shocked. Ghosts were living beings. After they died, their grievances would not dissipate and they would float around the world. Usually, they would only appear in the mortal realm. In short, they were just souls without bodies. And souls were the weakest. No one had ever heard of a ghost being able to cultivate to become an immortal, much less one that could rival divine races. Where do these ghost immortals usually stay? Ghost immortals need to absorb the yin chi of the underworld to cultivate, Long Zhun said. That's why they usually appear near the Yin River. Supreme Divinity, did you have a feud with a ghost immortal before? I Ching asked. Long Zhun glanced at I Ching, unhappy with the way he addressed her, but she could only sigh. I don't think so. In these hundreds of thousands of years, I've never left the Dragon Abyss, and I've never seen a ghost immortal. That was strange. Why would there be yin chi of a ghost immortal in a perfectly good dragon egg? And it happened to suppress I Ching, preventing him from hatching on his own. If Shining had not forcefully broken the eggshell, perhaps he really would not have been able to come out. The Dragon Abyss has never interacted with other places. Even the Dragon Valley rarely interacts. If you're talking about feuding, I don't. She suddenly stopped mid-sentence, as if remembering something. Her face paled and her fists clenched tightly. I just remembered something important. I'm going back to the main hall. Long. I Ching, your body is still very weak. You have to rest more. With that, she nodded at the few of them and hurried out. The few of them looked confused. Shining tilted her head. It looked like Chef's family in his previous life had a story too. After Longjin left, she suddenly became busy. She did not come back for a few days. It was obvious that she was looking for that ghost immortal. These few days, Chef was also trying hard to adapt to his dragon body. He only focused on two things every day: familiarize himself with the circulation of god power and cook for Shunning. Fortunately, he was originally a top student. After trying a few times, he finally succeeded in transforming back into that little being. Perhaps it was because he had begun to absorb the dragon energy for cultivation. His originally skinny body had finally gained some flesh. He looked like a baby, but he still did not grow in size. The dragon race had always relied on bloodline inheritance. Cultivation methods and whatnot did not need to be taught. He was born with it. The god power in his body began to grow at an alarming rate. In just a few days, he was already catching up to the black dragon. The black dragon felt very depressed. Originally, he wanted to go to Longjun to make his presence known. Unfortunately, He did not see her for a few days, so he could only come back to Shunning for comfort. But I Ching guarded against him like a thief. If he took a step closer, the black dragon looked like he wanted to hit him with a spatula. The black dragon felt like he had been abandoned by the whole world. 10 days later. Master, my cultivation has stabilized. I Ching poured a cup of tea and stood on the chair. His little body was almost lying on the table. Then he passed the cup of tea to Shunning. The other party took it with a natural expression, took a sip, and said, "Are you ready?" "Yes." "Oh, what about the dishes?" "I've prepared them for half a month." "Pastries?" 20-odd kinds. "Fruits?" 2 storage bags should be enough." "All right." Shunning then stood up lazily. "Let's go." I Ching jumped down from the chair. Seeing the 2 figures, one tall and one short, about to leave, the black dragon finally reacted. "Wait." He blocked the 2 of them. "Where are you going?" Chapter 250. I Ching frowned and looked at him coldly. "The Een River of the underworld." "Get out of my way, you little bastard." "Een River." Black Dragon was taken aback. "Why are you going there? What did you decide that? Why don't I know anything about it? I don't even know you. Not familiar." The black dragon felt as if his heart had been stabbed by a knife. He looked at Shunning and cried, "Exalted goddess, didn't you say I'm your little cutie?" "We're going to look for Shorty," Shunning explained. "Shorty? Who?" The black dragon was stunned. After a while, he remembered that this was one of the 3 people that the exalted goddess was looking for. "Exalted goddess, you know where she is?" "Yes." Shunning nodded. The Een Shi on the eggshell was exactly the same as the one on the flower in Shorty's room. In the netherworld, the black dragon was still confused. He glanced at I Ching, who was acting like a child. But Long Zhun is not back yet. "I will let her know," I Ching said. But Black Dragon was about to say something when a maidservant rushed in and bowed to I Ching. She said anxiously, "Young master, bad news." In order to avenge the young lord, Divinity single-handedly went to Wu Chi Mountain. Wu Chi Mountain? I Ching's expression darkened. "Speak clearly. What happened?" Supreme Divinity said that the Een Shi on the young master's eggshell might be related to the Phoenix clan, so in a fit of anger, the maidservant stamped her feet anxiously, her face full of anxiety. "The Phoenix clan has always been unreasonable. I'm afraid that Supreme Divinity will be at a disadvantage if you go there." I Ching clenched his fists and turned to look at the person beside him. "Master, let's go to the West Mountain first." Wu Chi Mountain was the headquarters of the Phoenix clan, and the Dragon clan and the Phoenix clan had always been at odds with each other. The Dragon race couldn't stand the arrogant attitude of the Phoenix race, and the Phoenix race couldn't stand the fact that the Dragon race had all kinds of bloodlines, and that all kinds of dragons, snakes, and fishes could become dragons. Therefore, although they were both of the god race, the 2 races never had any friendly relations. But Long Zhun was not an unreasonable person. She was so angry that she rushed to Wu Chi Mountain to seek revenge. She must have found something. Perhaps it was because he had become a divine being, but I Ching's flying speed was much faster than before. In addition, the Dragon Abyss had a transportation array that was connected to the Phoenix clan. In less than an hour, they arrived at the Phoenix clan's territory. Before they even reached Wu Chi Mountain, they could see lightning flashing and thunder roaring in the distance. Not far away, the sky was filled with dark clouds. From time to time, there would be lightning flashes in the sky, accompanied by loud booms. Below the clouds was a fiery red. The entire ground was covered in flames, and a scorching aura assaulted their faces. I Ching made a hand seal and set up an isolation array around the 2 of them. Only then did he rush into the half-flame and half-lightning world. "Little Zhun, what are you doing?" A man's voice came from the flames on the ground, with a hint of helplessness in his tone. "When have I ever offended you that you want to attack me?" "Shut up." Long Zhun stood in the sky, full of lightning. She was so angry that her body trembled. "You dared to plant ghost immortal Een Shi in my son's egg. You should have thought that this day would come." "Een Shi." The man paused. Instantly, a slender figure walked out of the flames. He He was dressed in blue and had long red hair, just like the flames behind him. He was extremely beautiful, and there was a cinnabar up between his eyebrows. His entire body exuded a seductive aura. He looked at the woman in front of him in surprise. "What ain't she? What's wrong with your precious dragon egg? You're still pretending." Long Zhen was even angrier. The lightning around her increased. She glared at the man and said, "Feng San, don't think I don't know. You were the one who sent the person who told me that I could use the power of reincarnation to save my son." The more she thought about it, the angrier she became. She looked at the man as if she wanted to pluck out all his feathers. "I didn't think that you would take the opportunity to instruct a ghost immortal to plant I Ching in the egg. You almost sucked my son dry. If I Ching had not returned to this world as an immortal and merged with his dragon body, if his master had not forcefully broken the eggshell, perhaps the more Long Zhen thought about it, the more she trembled. Feng San, I don't think I did anything wrong to you back then. You know how important my son is to me. Why did you do this to me?" I didn't. "Little Zhen, I really don't like the dragon egg you've given birth to," Feng San said with a confused expression. "I really don't like the dragon egg you laid. I was the one who sent you to send the dragon soul into reincarnation, but I really didn't ask anyone to plant I Ching in it. You're still trying to argue? In the entire divine realm, apart from you, a wandering phoenix, who else would have a relationship with a ghost immortal?" Feng San's face paled. He seemed to want to explain himself. Long Zhen obviously did not want to listen to him anymore. The lightning around her became even fiercer. Like a sharp blade, she attacked Feng San. Feng San could only dodge and summon a wall of fire to block the lightning. "Little Zhen, listen to me. Why would I harm you?" "Shut up." Long Zhen's attacks became more and more intense. She attacked as if she was going to die. At first, Feng San could still defend himself. But as time went on, he found it harder and harder to defend himself. Just as he was about to be hit by the lightning, a defensive array appeared in front of him. It absorbed the attack and reflected it back at him. Long Zhen could not dodge in time and was hit. "Little Zhen." Feng San was shocked. He did not expect this to happen. He tried to fly forward in a panic. Long Zhen took a step back and covered the area where she was hit. She gritted her teeth and endured the pain in her chest. The hatred in her eyes intensified. She summoned lightning and forced Feng San to retreat again. Her eyes turned as cold as ice. She laughed and said, "Back then, I must have been blind to have fallen in love with you." Feng San's body stiffened. He seemed to have heard something shocking. His eyes widened in disbelief. "Little Zhen, what did you just say? I thought you were different from the other phoenixes. I didn't expect you to be even more shameless than him. It's fine if you don't want to acknowledge my son, but you want to take his life." What did she mean?" "Feng San, Long Zhen, will sever all ties with you today." As soon as she finished speaking, her figure flashed, and she instantly transformed into a giant red dragon. The white lightning around her also turned red, and she charged downwards like a red lightning dragon. "Wait, Little Zhen." Long Zhen's speed was extremely fast. With a loud boom, the entire sky was filled with red lightning. Shun Ying and I Ching. A while later, Chef. Shining bent down and patted his little shoulder comfortingly. "You seem to have another father. I Ching, son of AB *TCH. Chapter 251. The next moment, the cry of a phoenix could be heard. A huge phoenix appeared on the ground. It was covered in rainbow-colored feathers, as if it was draped in rainbows. With a flap of its wings, it immediately dispersed the surrounding lightning. Its long tail feathers directly wrapped around the dragon's body, binding it tightly like a chain. As if it didn't want to hurt the dragon, it retracted its wings and hugged the dragon in front of it. "Let go of me!" Long Zhen screamed, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't break free from the other party's control. She had no choice but to turn back into her human form in a flash. Feng San reacted faster than her. He turned back into his human form and held onto the dragon. Using his larger size, he turned around and pinned her to the ground. "I'm not letting go." Long Zhen was furious, but she could not move. Even her god power was being suppressed. Feng San, you bastard. Little Jean, what did you just say? Can you say it again? Feng San looked at the person under him excitedly. His eyes were overflowing with affection. Did you just say that you like me? Little Jean, you like me, right? Get lost. Long Jean glared at him, her eyes filled with anger. I hate you. I wanted to pluck all your feathers off 160,000 years ago. Little Jean, his expression darkened. He buried his head in her neck. But I like you. I've liked you since I was young. Bullsh asterisk T. Long Jean did not believe him. You don't even acknowledge your own son. How dare you say you like me? That dragon egg is really mine? Feng San still couldn't believe his ears. It had been so many years, and little Jean had been guarding that egg to her death. He thought she had never fallen for him. That was why he did not dare to look for her. He did not expect that the egg was actually his. How could this be? I thought what? Long Jean's expression turned colder. She laughed mirthlessly. You were the one who abandoned us and returned to Wuqi Mountain without saying a word. Why are you still pretending now? No, I don't know. I really don't know. Someone told me. Get lost. Long Jean did not want to listen to him and began to struggle with all her might. Either you kill me or let me go. No, I won't let you go. Feng San hugged her even tighter. I've already lost you once. I won't let you go again. You bastard, let go. No, let go. No, I say. Suddenly, a hesitant female voice sounded from the side. The two of them subconsciously turned their heads and saw two figures, one big and one small, squatting beside them. They looked at the two of them with constipated expressions. The corner of Xin Ying's mouth twitched. Let's flirt. Don't put on a show, okay? She would lose fans if she continued to act melodramatic. Long Jean, Feng San, Phoenix Perching Palace. Feng San stared at the child in front of him, who did not even reach his waist. His eyes, nose, and mouth were so excited that stars seemed to float out his eyes. The more he looked at him, the more he felt that he looked like himself. This was actually his child. It was his and little Jean's. He stared at the child even more intently, not daring to blink for fear that he would disappear. His mouth opened and closed a few times before he managed to squeeze out two words. Call me Daddy. Splat. Shening could vaguely hear the sound of something breaking. The corner of I Ching's mouth twitched. With a swoosh, an immortal sword appeared in his hand. Master, can I kill him? Shening, calm down, chef. No matter how melodramatic it was still his own child, the kind that could not be cooked. Oomph. Long Jean, who was sitting on the other side, laughed coldly. She still looked indignant. Why do you have to pretend to acknowledge us now? Feng San's face paled. He sighed and turned to walk toward her. Little Jean, stop right there. Long Jean glared at him. Stay away from me. Feng San had no choice but to return to his seat. I really did not know that the dragon egg back then was my child. You were so resolute with me back then. In a fit of anger, I left the dragon abyss and returned to Wuqi Mountain. After that, I heard that you had a child. You thought the child was someone else's? Long Jean laughed coldly. Feng San hung his head, like a child who had done something wrong. It's all my fault. All these years, I did not dare to ask you personally. I missed out on you for so many years. Long Jean snorted. She took a deep breath to suppress the anger in her heart. She closed her eyes and said, I don't want to talk about what happened in the past anymore. I just want to ask you what's going on with the Enchi and the dragon egg. I really don't know what Enchi is. Feng San said anxiously. I do know one or two ghost immortals, but I only met them by chance when I was crossing the Een River. Een River? Long Jean paused. What did you go to the Een River? Feng San paused, as if he had let something slip. He subconsciously turned to look at the little figure standing beside Shening. Long Jean finally reacted. Her eyes widened. The person who broke into the underworld and sent the dragon soul into samsara was you. Her expression changed. How is that possible? I clearly asked. I was the one who told him not to say. Feng San sighed. I know you best. If you knew it was me, you would not have agreed to help. Long Jean fell silent. She hated him to the core. How could she have accepted his help? Feng San took a step forward. The love in his eyes seemed to be overflowing. He sighed and said, You don't have to worry about it. When I crossed the Ain River by force, I met a few ghost immortals by the river. Unfortunately, I was corroded by the Ain River's death chi. I accidentally awakened the ancient Fire Phoenix bloodline and became a divine supreme. It was a blessing in disguise. At that time, the dragon soul in the egg was too weak. It could not withstand any reincarnation sorcery. That was why it could only be sent to the underworld's reincarnation stage. To get to the reincarnation stage, one had to cross the Ain River. Feng San said this casually, but the Ain River's water could corrode one's divine soul. It was not that easy. He must have had no choice but to forcefully awaken it. Long Zhen frowned. She could not tell what she was feeling. She thought that he had let her down and then left the dragon abyss because he did not want to acknowledge their children. She did not expect that he was the one who sent the dragon soul into samsara. I really don't know what happened to the Yin Shi in the dragon egg. Feng Sam lowered his voice and said carefully, but I promise you that I will help you find out. How about that? Long Zhen glanced at him. A complicated look flashed across her eyes. A moment later, she calmed down and returned to her usual coldness. There's no need. She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, her expression was resolute. On account of how you sent my son into samsara, I will let bygones be bygones. I will look into the Yin Shi myself. With that said, she stood up and prepared to leave. Little Zhen, Feng Sin panicked. In a flash, not only did he appear in front of her, but he also conjured a seal to freeze Long Zhen in place. He hugged her and said, I will never let you leave me again. All these years, you have always been the only one in my heart. Long Zhen stopped in her tracks. Her expression was still cold, but her hand started to tremble. Feng San continued, Little Zhen, let's not miss each other again. Please trust me one more time, okay? Supreme Divinity. Just as he finished speaking, an announcement came from the door. The 438th Madam has arrived. Should I arrange for her to go to the rear hall? Feng San, Shanning, I Ching, AI, the slap in the face came too fast. It was like a tornado. Intersection, 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 intersection. Chapter 252. Feng San. Long Zhen's body crackled. You bastard. Little Zhen, listen to me. It's not like this. Ouch. It hurts. Little Zhen. Screams rang out in the hall one after another. The master and disciple who were drinking tea calmly. Master. Yes? Should we stop them? There's no need. It had been a long time since he had watched a melodramatic family drama. It was quite refreshing. We haven't started tearing down the house yet. There's no rush. Yes, master. No problem, master. Why are you sharpening the knife? Sharpen it first. We might need to use it later. He was afraid that he would not be able to control himself and destroy this pair. Half an hour later, the two of them finally stopped. Perhaps because he was in the wrong, Feng San turned into a punching bag. No matter how Long Zhen attacked him, he had no intention of resisting. It became a one-sided beating by Long Zhen. Perhaps he had forgotten to use his sorcery, but the house did not collapse. The tables and chairs in the house, other than the one that I Ching had specially used an array to protect, were all torn to pieces. Feng San was already beaten beyond recognition. His handsome face was now swollen like a pig's head. He looked weakly at Long Zhen, not forgetting to explain, Little Zhen, it's really not what you think. Get lost. Long Zhen could not suppress the anger in her. She kicked him again. Everyone in the divine realm knows that you, Supreme Divinity Feng San, are a playboy. All the goddesses in your backyard are competing with each other for beauty. She must have been crazy to believe his nonsense. Little Zhen, believe me, this is all a misunderstanding. I did not touch a single one of them. I couldn't tell that you were a man who cherished women. Long Zhen's gaze turned even colder. Keep lying. Right, isn't the new wife here? Why isn't she coming in? I can still drink some wine at the wedding. Feng San wanted to say more, but Long Zhen had already turned and walked out. Soon, she pulled someone in. That person was dressed in a red wedding gown and had a veil over her head. She was slightly taller than Long Zhen. Little Zhen. Feng San crawled up from the ground. Listen to me. The person who brought her here said that she is a stunning beauty. Long Jun continued to smile. Even I'm a little envious of your luck with women. I'm sure you won't mind. Let's take a look. After saying that, she pulled down the veil, revealing an exceptionally beautiful face. She was indeed stunning, with sharp eyebrows and red lips, full of heroic spirit, especially her eyes, which were especially bright, as though they were shining with light, looking exceptionally familiar. Puff, the master and disciple duo who were drinking tea, couldn't help but spit out 2 mouthfuls of tea. Holy shit, no way. As expected of peerless beauty, Long Jun glanced at the person in front of her. She could not help but feel a chill in her heart. She directly stuffed the veil in her hand back into the other party's hand. Then let the two of you. You. Before she could finish speaking, her eyes widened, as though she had discovered something. The bride, who had been standing quietly a moment ago, suddenly moved in a flash. She grabbed Long Jun in front of her, an immortal sword pressed against her neck. At the same time, an array appeared beneath them. Don't move. If you don't want to die, take me away from this godforsaken place. Little Jun, Feng San was shocked. His expression darkened. If you dare to hurt her, I will tear you into pieces. The person's hand conjured a gust of black chi. If you don't want her to die, step back. This is Inchi. Who are you? What do you want? Could this person be a ghost immortal? Feng San's hand, which was about to cast a spell, paused. He looked anxiously at the person in his grasp. Little Jun, don't be afraid. I will save you. Who needs you to save me? Long Jun seemed to have lost her mind from anger. She ignored everything else and forced her way through the array. Lightning appeared on her body again, and she attacked the person behind her. The person holding her was caught off guard and was forced back a few steps. Even the In Chi in his hand dissipated. The two of them were shocked. This was not In Chi. The person's expression changed. He turned and tried to rush out of the hall. Where do you think you're going? Feng San snorted. An array lit up at the door, blocking the exit. With a twist of his hand, he summoned a ball of true phoenix fire. With a scorching aura that could burn anything, he sent it towards the person in front of him. No one in this world dared to touch little Jun in front of him. The fire came closer and closer. It was about to burn the person. Suddenly, a figure appeared at the door. She raised her hand and caught the ball of fire. Then, she clenched her fist. With a sizzling sound, the true phoenix fire was extinguished. Feng San, Shunning turned to look at the person in the bride's makeup. She raised her hand and called out, Hey, Father Nyo. Lone Moon, who had just escaped death, froze on the spot. A moment later, a roar reverberated through the entire hall. Hey, my ass. He swung the sword in his hand at the person's head. Where the hell did you go? Ouch, 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 ouch. Shunning subconsciously held her forehead. Didn't I come looking for you? Look for your sister. Do you think I'm blind? You freaking bumped into her, didn't you? Don't mind such details. Is this a freaking detail? I was almost roasted. It's not Master's fault. I Ching hurriedly stood in front of Shunning to protect her. Unfortunately, the difference in height was too big. Half of his height could not block his anger at all. The three of us got separated. It's already a miracle that Master could find us. Lone Moon looked down and paused. Who is this little brat? I Ching, Shunning, half an hour later. In other words, you were originally a dragon. That's why you changed back the moment you arrived in the divine realm. Lone Moon, who had just heard the whole story, looked I Ching up and down. Yes. I Ching nodded. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. No wonder this fellow cheated all the way. His cultivation level rose so quickly. He was born on the finish line. Damn it. This bunch of winners in life who reincarnated through the back door. I can't catch up even if I work myself to death. Father Nyo, actually, Shunning was just about to speak. Shut up. Lone Moon turned and glared at her. You were born on the podium. You have no right to speak. Oh, I Ching. Long Jun could not help but ask, since this fellow Taoist is familiar with you, it must have been a misunderstanding. How should I address you? I Ching subconsciously replied, He's Nyo, I'm Lone Moon. Nyo my ass. He cupped his fists and bowed. I'm sorry. I was not clear about the situation before. I offended you. I hope Supreme Divinity will forgive me. It's all right. Long Zhen shook her head nonchalantly. Why are you here? I Ching asked. He even glanced at his wedding dress. He even changed into a woman's appearance and became a bride? If not for the fact that his face did not change and that they were too familiar with his aura, he and Master would not have recognized him at first glance. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He frowned. A moment later, he sighed and said, I found Shorty. Chapter 253. I Ching and Shun Ying were shocked. They asked, Where is she? Where is she? Don't worry, she should be fine now. Lone Moon frowned. When I first arrived in the divine world, I was near the underworld. I sensed the same yin qi as the flower in Xian Tong's room, so I chased it all the way to the underworld. Then I found her on the way. Little Shorty, are you all right? Shun Ying asked. He's fine, just slightly injured, Wang Yao said. Lone Moon seemed to recall something. His expression darkened. She was locked in a cave abode. I was not confident that I could get her out safely, so I let her go and find Shining first. I took her place for a while and waited for an opportunity to escape. I didn't think that I would be sent here before I could think of a plan. I was even told to marry an old sex fiend who had hundreds of wives. All of a sudden, the three screens all turned to look at a certain phoenix. The old sex fiend Feng San, Little Zhen. Feng San immediately turned to Long Zhen. Listen to me, I don't know anything about this. Long Zhen turned. It has nothing to do with me. Little Zhen. Feng San wanted to cry. Trust me this once, really. Why don't I bring you to the back palace? Then you'll know how to come back. I don't want to know. Listen to me. I'm not listening. Listen to me. I'm not listening. You said I dash, shut up. I Ching's mouth twitched. Immortal swords filled the sky, all aimed at the two of them. They had already acted out 2 chapters. Was there an end to it? If you keep talking, I'm going to attack. Feng San, Long Zhen, you're already attacking. You can spill your dog blood later. I Ching turned to look at Feng San. You should know who the person who sent Father Nyo here is, right? Feng San hesitated. After thinking for a while, he said, He's from the underworld. There's only one ghost immortal I'm familiar with there. Who? Ghost Immortal Zhu Ming. Feng San frowned. Then, as if thinking of something, he added, But if it's him, then he might not be trying to harm you. Lone Moon hesitated. What do you mean? Follow me to the rear hall, and you'll know once you see it, he said as he pointed behind him. They exchanged glances and followed Feng San to the rear hall. As soon as he stepped through the door of the rear hall, the scenery in front of him changed. The majestic hall instantly turned into a dense forest. Then he heard the cries of phoenixes and saw that there were dozens of phoenixes of different colors in their original forms, guarding something. Beside the phoenixes, there were a few women dressed in different clothes. There were formations set up around the phoenixes, and in the middle of each formation, there was an egg as tall as a human, with phoenix plume patterns faintly visible. This is... Long Zhen was shocked. The Phoenix clan's breeding forest. It's only temporary, Feng San replied. It had always been difficult for the Dragon Clan and the Phoenix Clan to have children. Every egg needed thousands of years to fully hatch, so the 2 clans attached great importance to this matter. Normally, after they gave birth, they would gather at one place to wait for their eggs to hatch. Even the Dragon Clan, which had always been separate, would gather at the place where their eggs were hatched for safety reasons. That was why only the clansmen of each clan knew where their eggs were hatched. They're my wives, Feng San said, sounding a little aggrieved. So, Shining paused. These eggs are all yours? Feng San almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Fellow Taoist, don't harm me even if you don't want to help. This is the place where the Phoenix clan hatches their eggs. I'm just bringing them here. Oh, she thought he was good at giving birth. I Ching, who thought he was good at giving birth. Lone Moon, who also thought so. Fortunately, he did not ask. 10,000 years ago, there was a problem with the original breeding forest of the Phoenix clan, and they could not find a new safe place. That's why they came to me. I split this mystic realm and asked them to temporarily hide here. who knew that more and more people would come. His cultivation level was the highest among the Phoenix clan. Since they were from the same clan, he could not reject them. Even after the new breeding forest was built, there were still people from the Phoenix clan who came to ask for help. Hatching needs to be looked after from time to time. That's why I also took in some people from other clans who had nowhere else to go. The few of them took a closer look. Indeed, there were women and men in the array. There were even people from other clans as well. Then why do the people in Phoenix Perch Palace call them wives? Feng Sin stiffened. Awkwardness flashed across his face. That's because I heard that you, Dragon Abyss, took in many servants. I thought that's why they called you that. Oh, *3, so they were just acting out of spite? One found a bunch of servants to incubate dragon eggs. The other found a bunch of wives to incubate phoenix eggs. In a sense, these two were a match made in heaven. Long Zhun did not reply, but the anger on her face dissipated a little. The people in this mystic realm are all prepared not to leave until all the eggs hatch. That's why the people here have nowhere else to go. They just want to seek shelter. Feng Sen looked at Lone Moon and said, "That's why Zhu Ming wanted to send your friend here. Perhaps he wanted her to stay away from something. I think the one who wants to harm her is someone else." The three of them stiffened. "Father Nyo, where is little Shorty now?" Shuning asked. Lone Moon paused. He quickly retrieved a transmission amulet and sent some immortal chi into it, but there was no response at all. How could this be? I told her to wait for me in a dense forest nearby. Let's go take a look. With that, Shuning turned and walked out the door. The others glanced at each other and immediately followed. Lone Moon pulled her back. "Shuning, it's this way. You have no sense of direction. Don't rush ahead." Lone Moon and Little Shorty had agreed to meet in a dense forest about 50 kilometers away from Wuqi Mountain. The forest there was dense, and it was very well hidden. Coupled with the chaotic aura outside the forest, it was very difficult to find them there. But shit. Lone Moon looked at the destroyed forest in front of him. There was still some Yin Qi lingering on the ground. They had only been gone for less than an hour. I'd better ask Zhu Ming about the situation. Feng Sen looked at the few anxious people and hurriedly conjured a water mirror. A moment later, the image of a middle-aged man dressed in black appeared on the water mirror. He was surrounded by thick death chi, but his face was exceptionally peaceful. There was even a hint of a smile on his lips. "Feng San, why are you so free to contact an old friend? Did you receive the gift I sent?" "Brother Chu, can you tell me why you sent that woman to me? What exactly happened?" Feng Sen asked. Why did something happen to her again? Zhu Ming was shocked. Again, Feng Sen paused. Chapter 254. Zhu Ming frowned and sighed. That day, I sensed a special aura in the divine underworld. I followed it and realized that it was immortal chi. Then I saw that woman. She was trapped in the Blood Soul Array at that time, so I saved her in passing. The Blood Soul Formation. Feng San was shocked, and his eyes widened. You're saying that someone wants to extract her soul? That's right. Zhu Ming nodded, his expression solemn. To be able to control the Blood Soul Array, he must be a ghost immortal. His cultivation level is not low either. The person who set up the formation must have noticed that her immortal soul was not as strong as that of a god, so he wanted to absorb her soul to nourish his own body. That was why he set up the Blood Soul Formation to weaken her soul body. I was afraid that if she continued to stay in the netherworld, the person who set up the formation would not let the matter rest. Thus, without waiting for her to wake up, I sent her to your place. I thought that with your ability in Feng Qi Mountain, you should be able to protect her. Lone Moon. So did he marry her for nothing? Then does Brother Chu know who captured her? I don't know either. Zhu Ming shook his head. When I found her, there was only an array around her. In other words, they had no idea where to look for him. Feng Sen expressed his gratitude and put away the mirror. Master? I Ching looked at Shuning. Given Shorty's cultivation, be it in the divine realm or the netherworld, she would be in danger. Shuning frowned. Let's go to the underworld. Yes, master. A certain pair of parents hurriedly said. The underworld is too dangerous. I Ching, Why don't we? There's no need. I Ching turned and glared at them. He pointed at Long Zhen and said, "Let's talk about this after we've settled your problem." It was enough that he had his master. Oh, disappointed asterisk too, she felt sad and felt that her master had given birth to her son. The Netherworld was the place where the dead souls of the three realms were born. It was the complete opposite of the immortal realm, which was filled with immortal qi. At the intersection of the two realms, it was as if the heavens and earth had split into two different worlds. One side was filled with the normal green immortal qi, while the other was filled with a thick black death qi. The trio had already arrived at the Netherworld. What do we do now? Lone Moon glanced at the wandering souls. I Ching cast a tracking spell and put down his hand after a while. No, this place is full of death qi. The aura in the forest disappeared the moment it entered the underworld. Shit, Lone Moon cursed under his breath. The underworld is so big. Where am I going to find Shorty? Why don't we ask him to come find us? Shun Ying suddenly suggested. Both of them were stunned and turned to look at her. What do you mean? Didn't the person who captured Shorty want her immortal soul? Indeed. I Ching nodded. That blood soul array is for devouring souls. We have immortal souls here too. They would never complain about having too many, right? I Ching paused, then understood. He turned to look at a certain someone beside him. Why are you looking at me? Lone Moon glared back in frustration. It was good to lure the snake out of its hole, but why me again? Shunning. They won't be able to see me even if I go. I Ching, I am no longer an immortal. And Father Nyo, didn't you not change your clothes? It just so happens that I don't need to change anymore. Who knows? Maybe he likes women. Master is right. Son of a B asterisk TCH. He understood the logic, but why did he feel the urge to slap these two to death? He took a deep breath and suppressed his violent nature. After thinking for a while, he said, "All right, I will set up a spirit gathering array to lure him out. But this is the underworld. I can only hold it for 5 minutes at most. You two hide well. If he escapes, don't ask me for food expenses in the future." "Yes, Father Nyo." "No problem, Father Nyo." As soon as he finished speaking, the two of them retreated tens of meters away. I Ching took out 2 aura-concealing talismans and stuck them on his chest. Master doesn't need them. He wanted to slap them to death even more. What should he do? Calm down, calm down. For the sake of Invincible Sect's only sword cultivator disciple, he would endure. Lone Moon took a big step forward and walked some distance away. He conjured a seal with both hands, and a spirit-gathering array appeared under his feet. It emitted a faint white light, and the overflowing yin qi and death qi in the array were immediately cleared out. It was especially obvious in the pitch-black underworld. Lone Moon walked into the array and sat down cross-legged. He pretended to meditate and regulate his breathing. Immortal qi emanated from his body. In an instant, the wandering souls around him seemed to have encountered something scary. They all fled in different directions. He sat there for a full 10 minutes. Apart from the decreasing number of wandering souls around him, there was no other reaction. It was eerily quiet. Was it useless? Lone Moon frowned. Could it be that the other party had seen through their plan? Or had they been discovered when they entered the underworld? He hesitated whether to retract the immortal qi. After all, this was the underworld. Although the spirit-gathering array could temporarily isolate the surrounding yin qi, it would not last for long. Just as he was about to retract it, he suddenly felt a cold yin qi that was different from the surrounding wandering souls flying towards him. It's here. His heart tightened. He immediately summoned a wall of qi to protect himself. There was a loud bang. A ray of black qi hit the wall of qi. Together with the array on the ground, it was instantly shattered. Lone Moon retreated more than 10 feet to avoid the attack. Who's there? Huh? A sinister laughter suddenly sounded. A human figure suddenly appeared in the black aura in the sky. It was a black-clothed woman. Her face was strangely pale, and 2 streams of bloody tears seemed to be flowing uncontrollably from her blood-red eyes as they flowed out. She looked at Lone Moon with a look of madness. "Immortal soul, my immortal soul, it's my mind." As she spoke, An even thicker chi exploded from her body. A huge array immediately appeared above their heads, flashing with a blood-red light. Blood Soul Array. Lone Moon was shocked. He turned and shouted, "Shunning!" The next moment, a rain of swords appeared in the sky and attacked the ghost immortal in the sky. The swords pierced through the heavy chi and the figure in the sky. Several holes appeared on the woman's body. Even half of her head was missing, yet she did not seem to feel anything. She turned around and looked at Lone Moon with her blood-red eyes. Her body, which had been pierced through, was instantly restored to its original shape. "Immortal soul, my immortal soul." With that said, she turned and pounced in Shun Ying's direction. The chi that was even stronger than before covered the sky and earth. Lone Moon was shocked. He hurriedly reminded, "Shun Ying, be careful. She doesn't have a physical body. You're grabbing, bam." Before he could finish speaking, the ghost immortal was pressed to the ground by a certain someone. Shun Ying turned to look at him. "Father Nyo, what did you say?" "No, nothing." Mother asterisk her. "Immortal soul, immortal soul." The ghost immortal was pressed down by Shun Ying until she could not move. Yet she still stared in the direction of Lone Moon and I Ching, unwilling to give up. Lone Moon hurried forward and asked anxiously, "Where's the other person from the immortal realm that you captured earlier?" Yet the ghost immortal did not seem to hear him at all. She only tried to squirm out of Shun Ying's hands and pounce toward Lone Moon. She was even crazier than before. This woman, what's wrong with her? Chapter 255. Lone Moon frowned. Suddenly recalling something, he turned to the person beside him and said, "I Ching, check her soul." I Ching nodded. He bent down and channeled some god power into the woman's glabella. A moment later, his eyes widened in shock. She doesn't have a primary soul. Indeed, Lone Moon's expression darkened. The primary soul was the most important part of a soul. Without it, a person would not have any consciousness. They would only act on instinct. She was no different from a wandering soul. But why would she attack them? And her target was clearly the immortal soul. "So you guys are here. It took me a long time to find you." Just as he was thinking about it, a familiar voice rang out. A figure dressed in black, similar to the woman's, landed in front of the three of them. "Your ghost immortal Zhu Ming." Lone Moon recognized him as the man in Feng San's water mirror. "You know me?" The newcomer nodded in surprise. He was crying tears of blood, just like the woman on the ground, but his expression was not as crazy as hers. Instead, he cupped his fists and bowed. "I am Zhu Ming. Greetings, fellow Taoists. My old friend Feng San said that you guys entered the underworld to look for someone. He asked me to help you." So it was that couple who called him. Lone Moon heaved a sigh of relief. "Thank you, fellow Taoist. You're too polite. My old friend Feng San's friend. I'm naturally. Mother Feng." Halfway through his sentence, his eyes widened as he looked at the female ghost immortal. "Fellow Taoist Zhu, you know her?" Lone Moon asked. "Mother Feng, it's really you." Zhu Ming stepped forward anxiously. He looked at the crazed woman and looked up at them. "What is going on?" "We wanted to lure out the ghost immortal who kidnapped our friend." Lone Moon explained what had happened. "But it was her. How could this be?" He looked shocked. "Although Mother Feng has lost her consciousness, she has always." He stopped mid-sentence and scanned Lone Moon from head to toe. "Could it be that you still have an immortal body?" Lone Moon exchanged a look with the other two and nodded. "I do have an immortal body." "I see." Realization dawned on Zhu Ming's face. He seemed to have figured something out. No wonder I met that friend of yours near the cave abode." "So it's Mother Feng." "Fellow Taoist Chu, what do you mean?" Lone Moon asked. Zhu Ming's expression darkened. A moment later, he sighed deeply and bowed to them. "Mother Feng is my junior sister. She is not in her right mind and has offended us in the past. Please forgive her." As he spoke, he stepped forward, knelt down, and patted the woman's head. The next moment, the person who had been struggling madly a moment ago suddenly quieted down. She stood there motionless, as if she had become a fool. She ascended to become an immortal when she was alive, and after she died, she became a ghost immortal, so she's very sensitive to immortal souls. She attacked you because she sensed a similar immortal soul and thought it was her own primary soul, so she instinctively wanted to take it back. Lone Moon glanced at the person on the ground. No wonder she quietened down the moment he sealed her divine perception and 5 senses. You mean to say that the person who took our friend was not her? I'm not sure either. Zhu Ming's expression darkened. He looked closely at the remnant Yin Qi on the ground. With a twist of his hand, a sliver of Yin Qi appeared in his palm. The last time I saw your friend, the remnant Yin Qi of the Blood Soul Array was indeed the same as Mother Feng's. Although I don't know why the Blood Soul Array did not work, Mother Feng did not have a primary soul. However, Mother Feng doesn't have a primary soul and has lost her mind. If your friend is really in her hands now, she would probably use the Blood Soul Array immediately instead of bringing him back to the Netherworld first. She wouldn't have fallen into a trap and come here. Lone Moon fell silent. Indeed, if this ghost immortal called Mother Feng was really a lunatic with no consciousness, how could she have thought of returning to the divine underworld before using the Blood Soul Array after capturing Shorty? But if it wasn't her, then who had captured Shorty? But the place where Xian Tong went missing did indeed have remnant Yin Qi of a ghost immortal. Zhu Ming thought about it. In that case, why don't I bring you to Mother Feng's residence to look for her? Perhaps there will be other clues. What's more, the Blood Soul Array needs 2 days to completely extract her soul. If she really did capture her, she should still be in her cave abode now. He looked at the woman beside him, who was already playing with her hair. Mother Feng is my junior sister after all. I can't just leave her like this. The few of them exchanged glances. There was no other way. Thank you, fellow Taoist Jew. Thus, the Taoist once again flew on his sword in the direction Zhu Ming had pointed out. Zhu Ming carefully helped Mother Feng up from the ground. Tung Yun led the way from behind. You two are quite close. Zhu Ming had just helped Mother Feng up when he heard a woman's voice. He looked up and saw the son that Feng San had repeatedly asked him to take care of. He was only waist-high, but he had a serious expression on his face the entire time. Behind him sat a woman in a white robe with blue trim. She sat cross-legged on the sword, one hand supporting her chin. She looked at him curiously. Zhu Ming was shocked. Was this woman here just now? Seeing that the 2 people in front of him did not look surprised, he smiled out of habit and replied, When Mother Feng was alive, we grew up together. We were also from the same sect. Naturally, our relationship is different. Shening nodded. Why did she become like this? Well, I don't know either. Zhu Ming frowned. He seemed to recall something. His eyes went blank for a moment. Most people who become ghost immortals die with great grievances. Their obsessions are not resolved. They suffer unbearable pain. They have to use their own souls to become ghost immortals. She was already like this when I became a ghost immortal. Perhaps she has a greater obsession than we do. Oh, then Shining wanted to ask more questions. Suddenly, she stood up and reached out to grab the person in front of her. Father Niu. Lone Moon was flying well. When he was grabbed, he almost fell off the sword. Why are you suddenly grabbing me? He steadied himself. Shining pointed in front of them. There's a river in front. Didn't you see it? They almost crashed into it. What river? Lone Moon looked around blankly. Apart from a stretch of darkness, there was nothing else. Shun Ying stared blankly at him. I Ching was the first to react. He summoned a sword filled with god power and flew it forward. Before it could fly more than 3 feet, the sword seemed to have been thrown into something highly corrosive. It melted and disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. In less than 2 seconds, it was gone. Holy shit. Lone Moon took a step back. It could even swallow god power. If Shun Ying had not reminded him, he would have crashed into it. Chapter 256. It's the Yin River of the Underworld. Zhu Ming exclaimed. The Yin River of the Underworld was formless and omnipresent. It was useless against ghosts and ghost immortals in the underworld, but it could swallow other people's souls. Everyone, be careful. The Yin River is constantly changing. Sorcery cannot detect it. Zhu Ming turned to look at the woman standing lazily behind I Ching's sword. This fellow Taoist can actually see the Yin River. Her eyes are different from ours. Lone Moon gave Zhu Ming an unreadable look. One had to get used to the cheat's eyes. Let's hurry. It's so dark here. Who knows what else is there? It's not far. It's just up ahead. Zhu Ming pointed ahead. The few of them turned and flew in that direction. Shining paused. She looked around. Was it very dark here? It was clearly a piece of gold, and it was a little dazzling to the eyes. Of course, that was except for the pitch-black river floating in the sky. The few of them did not fly for long before they saw a palace floating in midair. The surroundings were filled with thick Yin Qi. Compared to the majestic palaces in the Dragon Abyss and Wu Qi Mountain, this cave abode was much smaller. It was all alone. Perhaps it was because the Yin Qi was too thick, but there were not many wandering souls around. It was so quiet that only the footsteps of the few of them could be heard. This is it. The few of them landed in front of the palace. Zhu Ming seemed to be very familiar with this place. He waved his hand, and the doors to the palace opened. He helped Mother Feng, who was still in a daze, to a chair in the hall. The palace was empty. They could see all the way to the end. Apart from the 4 chairs, there was nothing else. There's a small courtyard behind. The 2 of you can go in and take a look, Zhu Ming reminded them. I Ching, go and take a look. I'll set up an array to look for Shorty's aura, Lone Moon instructed. I Ching nodded and walked to the back of the palace. Lone Moon walked to the center of the palace and released his divine perception. Instantly, the entire cave abode appeared in his divine perception. He activated his immortal qi and began to set up an array. Perhaps to avoid arousing suspicion, Zhu Ming did not help them look for Shorty. He only sat beside Mother Feng. Shining, who was the only one who had nothing to do, also sat on a chair at the side and waited. Perhaps she was a little bored waiting, so she habitually took out a fruit to eat. Just as he took one out, he used a little too much force, and the other one beside him fell out as well, rolling around. Just as she was about to bend down to pick it up, a pair of pale, bloodless hands picked it up first. Mother Feng, who had been sitting on the chair, stared blankly at the fruit in her hands, then looked up at Shining. Suddenly, he stretched out his hand and gave her a sinister smile. Ah! Shining tilted her head and took it. Thank you. However, the other party was still looking in the direction of her hand, a pair of bloody eyes staring straight at the fruit on top. Only the dripping sound of blood could be heard. It was very horrifying. Shining, who had bitten the core, after some thought, he took out the greenest fruit from his storage bag and handed it over. Do you want to eat it? Mother Feng was stunned. She looked at the fruit, then back at her. Suddenly, she reached out and snatched the fruit. His lips curved into a sinister smile again, and he stuffed the fruit into his mouth. The next moment, there was a loud thud. The fruit went straight through his mouth and fell to the ground. The person who had no physical body looked confused. Hey, it fell. Shining picked up the fruit and handed it over. Here, I have more. She took it again and swallowed it down in one gulp. Once again, it fell to the ground with a thud. Ha ha ha, you can't eat it. As if addicted, Shining picked up the fruit on the ground again and handed it over. The ghost immortal still looked like he had just snatched a treasure. Once again, he took the fruit and dropped it to the ground again. This happened repeatedly. Zhu Ming, who was watching the whole time, she did it on purpose, right? She definitely did it, right? There was someone else around. Master. I Ching finally returned from the backyard and shook his head at her. No, the backyard was even cleaner than the front. There were not even any chairs. Apart from Yin Qi, there was nothing else. Zhu Ming's expression darkened as well. If they could not find Mother Feng, they would be suspects. He thought for a moment and suggested, why don't I follow you to the forest where the woman went missing? I'm familiar with ghost immortals' auras. Perhaps I can find some clues? Lone Moon, who was setting up the array, stopped as well. His expression was equally dark. Shorty is indeed not here. Oh. Shining narrowed her eyes, but she ignored them. Just as she was about to pass the fruit to Mother Feng, she retracted it. Mother Feng caught nothing but air. Suddenly, she leaned forward and smiled. I'm not giving it to you anymore. I gave you so many. Why don't you return one to me? Lone Moon, I Ching, Zhu Ming, where's your shame? Didn't you just give me the same fruit? Are you bullying ghost immortals for not having physical bodies? Oh, and oh, mother phone paused. She clearly did not understand what Shun was saying. Her bloodshot eyes stared at the fruit in Shun Ying's hand, but she did not dare to snatch it away. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. Hey, you're almost. He was about to reprimand her, but Mother Phone took out a square token from somewhere and threw it at Shun Ying. Then, she stared at the fruit in Shun Ying's hand. Master! I Ching exclaimed. Lone Moon regained his composure as well. He looked at the token in Shun Ying's hand. What's this? A token? Zhu Ming looked confused as well. Why would Mother Phone have something like this? And why did the token seem to be imbued with god power? It should be the eye of the array. Shun Ying replied. Finally, she passed the fruit to the overjoyed Mother Phone. Then, with a loud thud, it fell to the ground. This time, Shun Ying did not help her pick it up. Instead, she picked up the token and walked to the center of the hall. Then, she squatted down and pressed it on the ground. In an instant, the entire cave abode lit up with a bright red light. An array appeared in the hall. The ground began to collapse inch by inch. The red light in the middle of the hall was especially blinding. A moment later, the space around them began to twist and distort. Then, a scene appeared beneath them, but they could not see clearly. This is the entrance to the mystic realm, Zhu Ming exclaimed. Lone Moon asked in surprise. How did you know that there's an array here to open the mystic realm? I could tell. Shun Ying replied casually. Everywhere was golden, except for the circle on the ground, which was black. There was also a square mark. Anyone could tell that there was a problem, right? Lone Moon, the red entrance was getting bigger and bigger. It was about to cover the entire hall. Lone Moon nodded at the other two. Then, he gave them a look. Go in. Everyone mounted their swords and flew in. Zhu Ming also pulled Mother Phone, who was still looking for the fruit on the ground. The red light flashed in front of them. The next moment, they were in another world. Chapter 257. This was a very small mystic realm. Rather than a mystic realm, it was more like a secret room. There was only a wide platform around them. There was a strange array carved on the platform. Even I Ching, who had inherited the Dragon Clan's heritage, had never seen it before. The few of them landed on the platform. Suddenly, the ground lit up with a red light. Countless arrays of different sizes lit up on the quiet platform. Lone Moon felt his heart skip a beat. His primordial spirit was unstable. It was as if something was about to break out of his body. Father Nyo, Shun Ying picked him up from the ground. I Ching also felt something was wrong. He did not land on the ground. Instead, he flew into the air. How are you? Lone Moon panted heavily. He used his immortal chi to regulate his breathing. He suppressed the feeling that his primordial spirit was about to be pulled out. The array below can absorb souls. Even immortal souls were no exception. Everyone was shocked. They hurriedly retreated further away. The array on the platform was fully activated. The entire platform turned red. Suddenly, a series of shrill cries rang out. Many ghostly figures appeared in the array. They seemed to be in extreme pain. They wailed and wailed as they tried to hit the red light that trapped them. Every time they hit the red light, their souls would fade a little. But they did not seem to feel anything. They continued to try to rush out of the array. What are these? Everyone present was stunned. The ones in the formation were called wandering souls, but it was obvious that these souls were weaker than wandering souls. Even their shadows were very faint. Immortal soul, my immortal soul. Mother Phone, who was still in a daze, suddenly shouted. She seemed to be agitated. She went crazy again. She turned and tried to fly towards the array. Mother Phone. Zhu Ming was shocked. He immediately used his Yin Qi to block her. But she became even crazier. She even started to attack Zhu Ming. Immortal soul, give it back to me. Get it back to me. What's going on? Lone Moon looked at the array below and the crazed Mother Phone. They had already sealed her divine perception and 5 senses. Why was she still like this? Could it be that she had something to do with the array below? Don't you guys feel that? Shun Ying suddenly spoke. She pointed at the ghostly figures in the array below. The shadows down there are all the same. What's the same? Lone Moon lowered his head to look at the array formation below him. Subconsciously, he took a closer look at the ghostly figures. His eyes widened. Holy shit, they really looked the same. Whether it was the figure or the face, there were actually 2 or 3 people who looked exactly the same. How could this be? I Ching looked confused as well. Although people are similar, no matter what, they can't be completely the same unless... He stopped mid-sentence and sucked in a breath. The 2 of them looked at each other and exclaimed in unison, soul-splitting array. This was a formation that could directly separate a person's 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls. Those people who looked exactly the same were originally separated from the same soul. Mas! Just as I Ching was about to speak, Shining had already jumped down and stepped hard on the edge of the platform. With a loud bang, a corner of the platform collapsed. The soul-splitting array immediately dimmed. The hundreds of ghostly figures trapped inside floated out. The 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls began to gather together. The number of ghostly figures decreased by more than half. The shrill cries from before also stopped. Perhaps because their souls were too heavily injured, a few of the ghostly figures were still unconscious. They swayed as they floated towards the exit of the mystic realm. The few people in the air followed them down. These ghostly figures lost some of their souls. Let's hope that the power of reincarnation can restore their souls. Zhu Ming looked at the ghostly figures in the air and sighed. But I'm afraid they're going to be idiots for a few lifetimes. Shorty is not among those ghostly figures. I Ching checked all the souls that floated out and heaved a sigh of relief. It looks like the person who captured Shorty was planning to bring her here to extract her primary soul after forcing her soul out. Lone Moon frowned. He looked at Zhu Ming, who still had a crazed look on her face. Lone Moon frowned and glanced at the crazed Mother Feng, who was trapped by Zhu Ming. This array looked like it had been set up for a long time. It looked like Mother Feng's primary soul had been extracted by this array as well. That was why she suddenly went crazy. But why was this array that hid the small mystic realm in her cave abode? And why did she have the token to open the entrance? When they entered the mystic realm earlier, apart from the divine I Ching, Zhu Ming's and Lone Moon's primordial spirits were almost pulled into the array. That proved that ghost immortals could not control this array. This array was definitely not set up by Mother Feng. What's that? Shining pointed to the center of the array. The few of them paused. Then, they saw a transparent ball in the middle of the array. There seemed to be something trapped inside. This looks like a fragment of a remnant soul. Chu Ming took a closer look and formed a hand seal. Immediately, the remnant soul floated out of the ball and formed a small figure. The figure hugged its knees and curled up into a ball. It looked like a child less than 2 years old, and there was something familiar about its facial features. Shorty, Shining suddenly said. Lone Moon and I Ching's hearts tightened. This is Shorty's remnant soul? Are you sure? Shining nodded. It was the same as what she had seen when she was sleepwalking. That's not right. Lone Moon frowned. Even if Shorty's soul was split, she should look like an adult. This remnant soul obviously looks like a child. Unless... He paused and exchanged a look with I Ching. Both of them had the same thought. This remnant soul was separated from her before she was reincarnated. I Ching's expression darkened. He seemed to recall something and hurriedly looked around. After a while, he pointed to an array beside him and said, Master, look, there's a realm-guiding array here. Shorty must have been pulled from the invincible heavenly palace to the divine underworld by this remnant soul. But the realm gate opened by the realm-guiding array was not stable. It was possible that Shorty had not been transported directly into this array. We had to find her quickly. Lone Moon's expression darkened. He was getting more and more anxious. From the looks of it, the person who had captured Shorty was not just looking for a random immortal soul. He was plotting to get his hands on Shorty's soul. Everyone, Zhu Ming suggested. Since this remnant soul belongs to the person you're looking for, and the souls are connected to each other, why don't we use the connection between the remnant soul and the main body and use the water element technique to find out her current location? The few of them paused. That's right. They had almost forgotten about this technique. although the remnant soul could not compare to one of the 3 souls and 7 spirits, and it would slowly dissipate over time. It was still one with the main body. Whatever the main body saw, the remnant soul could also sense. If they used the water element technique, they would be able to see Shorty's current location. Chapter 258. Lone Moon hurriedly conjured a seal and guided the remnant soul. A moment later, 2 shadows appeared above the remnant soul. One was where the remnant soul was. That was where they were now. The other was a place filled with immortal chi. Huge, transparent, crystal-like mountains floated all around them. There were even shadows of palaces on them. "This is the 1,000-feet mountain," Zhu Ming exclaimed. "Where is the 1,000-feet mountain?" Lone Moon asked anxiously. "That's Supreme Divinity Qian Yu's residence. It's at the easternmost part of the divine world." Zhu Ming frowned. "Supreme Divinity Qian Yu may be cold, but he has a good reputation in the divine world. He's a very righteous person. I don't think he would set up such a vicious array. Why would the person you're looking for be there?" "We'll only know when we get there." "Thank you, fellow Taoist Jew." Lone Moon nodded at him and turned to the other 2. Let's go. Let's go find her." I Ching did not hesitate. He summoned his flying sword. Shining grabbed the ball containing Shorty's remnant soul and jumped on his chef's sword. They flew out of the mystic realm. When the 3 of them reached the 1,000-feet mountain, they finally understood why it was called the 1,000-feet mountain. They saw huge, crystal-like mountains floating in the air. They shone with a silver-white light. Moreover, these crystal mountains were moving. They looked like a huge array formation. The mountains were also translucent. It was easy to get lost inside. Lone Moon subconsciously glanced at Shuning. He turned and instructed I Ching sternly. "Look after her. We're only looking for Shorty this time. We can't get separated again." According to Zhu Ming, Supreme Divinity Qian Yu's cultivation level is very high. We can't tell if he's a friend or foe. Shorty is in his hands. Before we find her, don't act rashly. He added, "You still have Orokin sealing talismans, right?" "Yes." I Ching retrieved a few Orokin sealing talismans. "Give me 2. Lone Moon took them and gestured for I Ching to put 2 on as well. "Try not to alert anyone. Do you understand?" "Yes, yes, yes." The 2 of them nodded. "Let's go." "Wait, Father Niu, what now?" "Are you sure?" Shining scanned him from head to toe at the bright red wedding robe he was wearing. "Are you sure you want to go in like this?" F***CK. It was all because of these 2 that he had forgotten to change back. Lone Moon conjured a seal and was just about to remove the shape-shifting spell on his body and turn back into a man. He turned to look at a certain foodie, and with a flick of his wrist, he cast another transfiguration technique. In an instant, the figure changed into a familiar yet strange face. Shun Ying's face. The 2 of them, "What are you looking at?" Lone Moon glared at the 2 of them. "Becoming like this is better than any Orokin sealing talisman." I Ching. What she said made sense, and he couldn't refute her. Shun Ying. Mother asterisk her. "Let's go." Lone Moon rode on his sword and flew forward, bypassing the crystal floating peaks one by one. He released his divine perception to the fullest, paying attention to everything around him. The strange thing was that along the way, they did not see any other Protoss. Not only that, these crystal floating peaks did not seem to have any array fluctuations. Apart from floating here and there, they did not seem to have any other effect. Gradually, on top of the crystal floating peaks, some palaces appeared. Lone Moon took out the transmission talisman that he had given to Shorty previously and sent a bit of immortal chi into it, but there was still no response. The crystal floating peaks seemed to have the ability to block signals, and he could not contact Shorty at all. "Shit," he cursed under his breath. "There are too many crystal peaks here. The transmission talisman is completely useless. Why don't we split a few?" I Ching subconsciously pulled out his sword. "You're crazy." Lone Moon rolled his eyes. "Do we still want to save Shorty? Can you 2 violent maniacs stop coming up with such lousy ideas? What if the other party gets angry and kills her? Invincible sect only has one sword cultivator disciple left. Then what do? We can only search slowly. Lone Moon looked at the terrain and waved at the two of them. I just looked at the movement pattern of these crystal peaks. They should all be floating in the west direction. There are no array formations in the middle to control them, and the deeper we go, the more palaces there are. He pointed to the front and said, so I guess that these crystal peaks should be circular around something in natural maze. Shorty should be in the innermost position. Although flying in a straight line is the fastest way to get there, there must be some kind of connection between these crystal peaks. However, there must be some kind of connection between these crystal peaks. There shouldn't be anything that can directly lead to the center. Master, be careful. Before he finished speaking, I Ching suddenly pulled Xuning and retreated to the left. Rumble instantly, there was a loud sound, and a huge aura swept over, brushing past Lone Moon's right side. The crystal peaks in front of them seemed to explode side by side, breaking into pieces and falling from the sky. A wide path suddenly appeared on the right side, and they could faintly see the palaces inside. There's a direct path. Xuning pointed to the front. Lone Moon, son of AB asterisk TCH. Bring him along and dodge. Will you die? Fu asterisk K. In the next moment, two shocking suppressive forces came from the front. Even I Ching frowned uncomfortably. The surrounding crystal peaks kept breaking. Lone Moon set up a defensive array around himself. There are people fighting in front. Judging from this oppressive force, their cultivation level must be. Before he finished speaking, his eyes widened. I feel Shorty's aura. It's over there. I Ching paused. He sensed carefully and found a familiar immortal chi. The two of them exchanged a look and immediately flew in that direction. The deeper they flew, the more broken crystal peaks they saw. There were even pieces of palaces floating around. In the distance, there seemed to be two figures fighting, one in green and one in white. They could not see clearly, but the aura around them was shocking. Compared to the battle between Long Zhun and Feng San, it seemed even more intense. Even though it was just a wave of suppressive force, Lone Moon felt the immortal chi in his body stagnate. He looked up at the two people in the sky. Huh, chef, don't you think that white figure looks familiar? I Ching looked up and nodded. Yes, a little, but he could not remember. In the next moment, an impatient voice came from the other side. I told you, I don't know the person you're looking for. No matter how many times you ask, it's the same. I don't know her. The person on the other side did not respond. The voice spoke again, this time in a serious tone. I've already saved the person you asked me to save. It's been so many years. Why do you have to keep pestering me? A moment later, a cold voice spoke. She also said, where is she? Don't go too far. The two of them started fighting again. Why did it feel like that voice sounded familiar? Chapter 259. Before Xuning and the others could think about it, an even stronger suppressive force swept over them. There was another rumbling sound, and the surrounding crystal peaks were destroyed. I Ching hurriedly released his dragon might to protect the two people beside him. Xuning was stunned. She pointed to the right and said, Hey, isn't that Short? The two of them paused and looked in the direction she was pointing. Indeed, there was a person flying in the upper right. She was dressed in a pink robe and had a defensive array around her. She was looking at the two people fighting in front of her anxiously. The two of them were overjoyed. They were about to go forward when Xuning raised her hand and shouted, Hey, Shorty! In an instant, these four words spread throughout the entire Thousand Mountains range. Even the two people fighting in the sky were stunned. I Ching, Lone Moon, he had the urge to deduct all the food expenses. What happened to coming secretly? Did she know what low-key was? Xian Tong's body stiffened. She turned around in disbelief. Her face was filled with joy. She immediately flew over on her sword. Sect Master. Just as she was about to pounce on them, there was a flash of white light. The white figure that was originally fighting suddenly descended toward them at a speed faster than Shorty. I Ching and Lone Moon finally saw the figure clearly. They were both stunned. Bai Zhe. 2. inches the next moment, the figure appeared in front of the three of them. She looked over with excitement and disbelief. Then, she hugged Father Nyo beside her. Shuning, I Ching, Father Nyo, who was stiffened in the hug, for all, huh? In the next moment, Bai Zai's cold and excited voice rang in their ears. Shun, shun, shun. For a long time, she could not say the next word. Her ears turned red. Master. Shorty finally flew down and buried her head in Shun Ying's arms. Her expression of ecstasy, just a moment ago, suddenly changed. She cried so loudly that it shook the heavens. Master, you're finally here. I knew that you would definitely come to save me. Ching, little bitch. Yes, I'm here. Shun Ying patted her on the back. Don't cry. Her clothes were brand new. Bai Zai, who was carrying Lone Moon, paused. He looked at Shun Ying in his arms, and then at the person beside him who looked exactly the same. There were two Shun Ying. Shun, your sister. Lone Moon, who finally reacted, exploded. Look carefully before you hug her. Bai Zai finally understood and pushed Lone Moon away without hesitation. In a flash, he appeared in front of Shun Ying as if nothing had happened. Shun Ying. He finally managed to say her name. I really miss you. Shun Ying finally managed to pull the slug out from in front of her. The next moment, she saw his starry eyes. Stunned, she asked, Who are you? Bai Zai, Ching Lone Moon. He could faintly hear the sound of a knife piercing his heart. The starlight was extinguished. Bai Zai, is this the person you're looking for? A questioning voice suddenly rang out in the sky, and the person who had been fighting with Bai Zai also flew down. Only then did everyone see who it was. He was dressed in a green robe with black hair draped over his shoulders. His face was like jade, and his entire body exuded a refreshing aura that was exceptionally familiar. Apart from his pair of black eyes, which lacked a bit of liveliness, he was simply Father Nyo. Tu I Ching and Shun Ying exclaimed at the same time. Lone Moon, what the hell was this? Thousand Legs Hall. Lone Moon, who had already returned to his original appearance, looked at the person sitting in the main seat and felt awkward all over. They really looked exactly the same. If not for the fact that they were wearing different clothes, he would have had the illusion that he was looking at himself in the mirror. Father Nyo, you have a brother too? Shun Ying could not help but ask. Get lost. Lone Moon rolled his eyes. Who had a brother? I didn't think that there would really be someone who looks exactly like me in this world. Yu looked at Lone Moon with some surprise. His brows were knitted together as if he was used to it. He looked dignified. Supreme Divinity, Yu really isn't Elder Lone Moon. Xiantong was also a little confused. She looked back and forth between the two people who looked exactly the same. Not only did they look similar, even their auras were similar. It was just that one was filled with immortal chi and the other was filled with god power. So it's all because I got the wrong person. Yu snorted coldly. Still with some anger, he said, Bai Zai, what else do you have to say now? The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. Ever since he first met Bai Zai many years ago, Bai Zai had been forcing him to ask about Sect Master Shen's whereabouts. No matter what he said, Bai Zai did not believe him. What's more, he had been guarding the 1,000 Feet Mountain for many years. He had been forced into a corner and even fought over a disagreement. The entire 1,000 Feet Mountain had been destroyed countless times. Now it seemed that he had suffered an undeserved calamity. I told you long ago that I don't know the person you're looking for. All these years, you kept asking me about her whereabouts. Do you believe me now? All these years you've been at my 1,000. Bai Zai. Yu called out twice, but realized that Bai Zai was not even listening to him. A pair of slightly cold eyes were currently staring at the woman beside him. His clear eyes were filled with the image of the woman beside him. From time to time, he would pass something over to her in a fawning manner. Fruit, pastries. Thank you. Bai Zai's eyes lit up even more. His ears started to turn red again. Patches of red began to spread, and even his hair started to be dyed red. A moment later, he replied in a low voice, You're welcome. At that moment, everyone could faintly see pink bubbles appearing around them. Xiantong, Qian Yu Lone Moon, I Ching's face darkened as his position was stolen. He resisted the urge to draw his sword. Yu Zhong felt that his kickback then was too light. He stepped forward angrily and said, "Supreme Divinity, you don't have to worry about Master's matters." "You are." Bai Zhe hesitated for a moment. He took a closer look at the other party's aura and immediately recognized who it was. His expression turned cold. Why was this annoying person still here? He frowned but did not let go of the plate in his hand. Still looking. The corner of I Ching's mouth twitched. He took a step to the side, wanting to block the two of them. Unfortunately, because of his height, his small body could not block the two of them. So, he climbed onto the table. With the advantage of being a head taller than the other party, he stared coldly at the other party. "What are you looking at, little bitch?" At that moment, the two of them were in such a strange position, staring at each other with big and small eyes. Lone Moon, King retard. He really wanted to pretend that he did not know these two people. Lone Moon frowned and nudged Xian Tong beside him. He lowered his voice and said, "Little shorty, what exactly is going on? Didn't I ask you to wait for me in the forest? How did you get here?" "Elder, I was indeed waiting for you there. But the ghost immortal suddenly chased after me. I cannot defeat him. Fortunately, Supreme Divinity Bai Zhe happened to pass by. I told him that I was a disciple of Invincible Sect. He saved me and brought me here." Chapter 260. Lone Moon thought about it carefully. When they were in the forest previously, they only cared about the remaining Yin Qi and neglected the remaining god power around them. After all, that place was close to Wuqi Mountain. It was normal for there to be god power. After I woke up, I mistook Supreme Divinity Qian Yu for you. That's why I asked for the sect master's whereabouts. Xian Tong continued. Supreme Divinity Bai Zhe and Supreme Divinity Qian Yu got into a fight. Then you guys came. So that's what happened. So was Bai Zhe who saved her. He turned to look at the person sitting at the head of the table. Qian Yu's face was as black as ink. He looked like he was trying his best not to attack. Bai Zhe had obviously mistaken Qian Yu for him and wanted to find out where Shining was. From his expression, Bai Zhe had been harassing him all these years. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He said in a low voice, "Since Shorty has been found, we won't disturb you anymore." He stood up. This was too embarrassing. They had better leave. Leave. The anger on Qian Yu's face grew. He snorted and said, "My 1,000-feet mountain is not a place where you can come and go as you please. You've destroyed so many of my crystal peaks. Are you going to go back on your words?" Lone Moon's heart sank. He knew it would not be so easy to leave. Supreme Divinity Qian Yu is too serious. We are not that kind of people. My Invincible Sect is a righteous sect. We have always been fair and impartial in our dealings. We're not biased, Lone Moon said seriously. So, every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. Look for the culprit. Without hesitation, he threw the blame to Lone Moon. As long as the few of them could leave, it was fine. The others understood immediately. Therefore, all eyes in the room turned to look at a certain white figure. It's him, it's him, it's him. Our scapegoat. Bai Zhe, his expression stiffened. He finally turned to look at Qian Yu. Perhaps because he was really in the wrong, he stepped forward and said, "This is indeed my fault. I will compensate you." With that said, he turned and walked out the door. Everyone looked at each other and followed him out. He stood on the platform in front of the palace and chanted a long string of strange incantations. Not long after, a huge array appeared under his feet. He waved his hand, and the formation began to rise slowly, growing larger and larger. In a short while, it had already enveloped half of the sky, and a bright white light shone. In the next moment, the ground shook, and a large number of crystal fragments rose into the air. As if they were being pulled by something, they began to gather and reform, forming many tall crystal peaks. As if time had been reversed, the crystal peaks that filled the sky once again appeared in the surroundings. There were no signs of damage at all. Everyone present was stunned. It was not that there were no sorcery spells that could repair damaged objects. And apart from Shining, who did not know any sorcery, even Shorty would not find it difficult to repair a palace. But this was the first time they had seen an array that could repair hundreds of floating peaks in an instant. As expected of the primordial divine Beast Clan, Qianyu sighed as her eyes darkened. Bai Zhe had already turned around and walked straight towards Qianyu. With a turn of his hand, a blue pearl suddenly appeared in his hand. He handed it over and said, "This is the soul-suppressing pearl that you wanted. In this way, can we write off what happened before?" Qianyu took the soul-suppressing pearl, and something flashed across his eyes. After a while, he nodded and said, "In that case, I will not pursue the matter." He turned to look at the floating peaks in the sky, and suddenly thought of something. But the crystal peaks have been repaired, and more than 10 of the 81 palaces of the Thousand Mountains Mountain have been destroyed. They should also be repaired as before. Bai Zhe nodded. All right. With that said, he turned and flew towards the various floating peaks and began to repair the palaces. The palaces of the Thousand Mountains Mountain were different from other places. Although most of them were not big, they were all on the crystal peaks. Some of the cave abodes were even more hidden and difficult to detect. That was why Bai Zhe's array previously did not repair the palaces above. But after all, they were only palaces. Compared to the crystal peaks, they were much simpler. More than 10 palaces could be repaired in, at most, 4 to 6 hours. But why did they have to repair it too? Lone Moon glared angrily at a certain person who was still circling around Fudishun. That kick he gave back then was really too light. Wait, Shining, what are you doing? Put down that roof beam. Help my ass. The roof beam has been broken. Eat your fruits properly. Can't you go and slack off? Oh, and Bai Zhe, stop snatching chef's plate. You destroyed this place. Can you have some self-awareness? Didn't you hear that Qianyu said that no one could leave before the repairs were completed? King retard. Do you still want to leave here or not? Father Nyo felt so tired. Apart from Little Shorty, everyone else was a burden to him. Little Shorty, come over for a while. Finally, there was only one palace left. Lone Moon heaved a sigh of relief and waved at Xiantong. Xiantong flew over directly. Elder, what instructions do you have? I saw that when you made the seals just now, you were much slower than usual. Are you injured? Xiantong's expression darkened. She lowered her head and said, Yes, I'm slightly injured. Give me your hand. Lone Moon first checked her meridians, then activated a bit of immortal chi. He put a finger between her brows and looked at her primordial spirit. He was shocked to find that although her body was not injured at all, for some reason, her primordial spirit was extremely unstable, as if it could come out at any time. This is called a slight injury. Lone Moon's expression darkened. How could this be? When they separated, she was clearly fine. Was it that ghost immortal who injured you? Xiantong nodded honestly. Didn't I tell you to take care of yourself and run if you can't win? Primordial spirit injuries were not like physical injuries. It was very difficult to heal. It looked like nothing, but if one was not careful, one's soul would be destroyed. The others also looked at Little Shorty worriedly. Xiantong lowered her head even more and said apologetically, I'm sorry, Elder Lone Moon. My cultivation level is too low. That's why. What are you apologizing for? This is not your fault. Lone Moon was a little irritated. She must have undergone the soul transfer spell before entering the Blood Soul Array. I Ching also checked her injuries and said in a low voice, This body is not hers in the first place. Now that she has been injured by the ghost immortals In Chi, that's why her primordial spirit is unstable. Lone Moon fell silent. He looked at Xiantong beside him. Why did this unlucky child always get herself into trouble? Do you have a way? Shining turned to look at the person beside her. Bai Zhe, who was suddenly called out, paused. His eyes lit up. Yes. He nodded hard, faster than ever before. His gaze was fixed on Shun Ying's face for a while. Then he subconsciously turned his head away. His face was burning red. After a while, he said, But you have to follow me back to Baiyin Mountain. Chapter 261. Do you really have a way to cure Little Shorty? Lone Moon asked anxiously. Bai Zhe looked at Lone Moon. His blush faded a little, and he spoke more fluently. There's a spirit spring on White Cloud Mountain that can nourish the soul. Lone Moon was overjoyed. All right, let's go now. The few of them finished repairing the palace and flew back to the main hall. Lone Moon said to Qianyu, who was supervising them, Supreme Divinity Qianyu, the palace has been repaired. Sorry for the disturbance. We are in a hurry to treat our disciples' injuries and will not stay any longer. Qianyu did not continue to make things difficult for them. He nodded and said, Since the Thousand Mountains mountain has been repaired, I will not force you to stay. He turned to look in Xiantong's direction. As if guessing what they were thinking, he added, This Miss Xiantong's primordial spirit is unstable. Even with the spirit spring, she needs immortal qi to protect her from time to time in order to recover. Thank you, Supreme Divinity Qianyu, for telling us. The few of them did not stay any longer. They all flew out on their flying swords. Qianyu conjured a seal, and the surrounding crystal peaks opened up a path to the outside world. Aren't you coming? Shining suddenly turned and asked. Qianyu paused. He looked around and realized that Shining was asking about him. He thought about it carefully and remembered that this was the woman Bai Zhe had been waiting for all these years. He could not remember her name and replied, It's not convenient for me to leave the Thousand Mountains mountain. Forgive me for not seeing you off. Shining tilted her head. Why? Aren't you injured too? Qianyu paled. Something flashed across his eyes. He immediately replied, I was slightly injured when I fought with Bai Zhe just now. I'll be fine after resting for a while. Oh. Shining did not ask further. Within seconds, they disappeared into the horizon. Little Shorty, how are your injuries? The moment they left the 1,000-feet mountain, Lone Moon summoned the huge fan-shaped Dharma artifact and pulled everyone over. He asked with a serious expression. I'm fine for now. Xiantong shook her head. My primordial spirit is only unstable. I'm not injured. As long as it's not an out-of-body spell, I'll be fine. Lone Moon nodded. I didn't ask you before. Did you see the ghost immortal who attacked you clearly? This. Xiantong frowned and said, That person's entire body is filled with yin qi. My cultivation is too low, so I can't see his face clearly. Is it a woman? She thought about it carefully and shook her head. No. Although I couldn't see his face clearly, his figure was definitely not that of a woman. Lone Moon and I Ching exchanged a look. Their expressions darkened. It looks like Mother Feng did not attack her. The other party's target is obvious. It's Shorty's soul, I Ching said in a low voice. Even if they manage to avoid it this time, they will only be more careful next time. That's right. Right now, we still don't know who they are or why they are targeting you. Lone Moon's expression became more and more serious. Before that, you'd better not leave our side. To be more precise, you better not leave Xinying's side. All right, disciple understands. Xiantong's eyes lit up. She looked as if she had won some unexpected prize. I will definitely not leave Sect Master. I Ching, Lone Moon, he suddenly felt as if he had made a wrong decision. Could they really return to the immortal realm safely? Lone Moon nudged the person who was chewing on a fruit beside him. Shining, why are you? Before he could finish, Xinying's eyes suddenly lit up. She exclaimed loudly, I remember now. What? Everyone was shocked. What did she discover? Shining turned and pointed at the person beside her. So you're that furball. I Ching, Lone Moon, Xiantong, Bai Zhe, you only freaking recognize me now? Baiyin Mountain was Bai Zhe's residence. Compared to the cold and hard crystal peaks of 1,000-feet mountain, the sea of clouds of Lingtai Mountain, the greenery of Wuqi Mountain, and the volcanoes of the Dragon Abyss, Baiyin Mountain lived up to its name. Hidden among the layers of white clouds, its white palaces were blindingly bright. The surroundings were filled with blue god power. It was not as cold and dignified as the other divine venerables. Along the way, there were all kinds of immortal beasts and demons. Among them, there were even divine beings. It was very lively. Lone Moon and the others finally had the time to understand the basic situation of the divine underworld. Unlike the immortal realm, the people of the divine realm were more relaxed. They did not have the concept of territory, nor did they have the complicated division of continents. Basically, The people of the divine realm could go wherever they wanted, as long as they did not barge into other people's homes. In the divine realm, apart from the various divine races, there are all kinds of legendary, ferocious beasts, auspicious beasts, and wild demons. There were also those who were originally immortal cultivators before the divine realm and immortal realm were separated. There were high and low cultivation levels among the gods. Among them, the four divine races were the strongest. They were the dragon, phoenix, qilin, and black tortoise. But the qilin and black tortoise had long been extinct since ancient times. The dragon and phoenix races had always been at odds with each other and would often fight. All in all, the divine realm was a free-range place. It was no wonder that they fell out with the immortal realm. They were clearly stronger than the immortal realm, but in the end, the divine realm ascended to the underworld and did not fight to the end with the immortal realm. And among all the divine races, there were only 5 people who could be called divine venerables. Perhaps it was a coincidence, but Shen Ying and the others had all interacted with them. There was only to talk about Long Zhen and Feng San. They were Chef's parents. Apart from Bai Zhe, there was also Supreme Divinity Hong Yu. Bai Zhe said that he was formed from a green lotus at the beginning of the world. He was the only plant that became a god. He was pure and had no conflicts with the world. That was why he was the only god that had lived since ancient times. Usually, his only hobby was to give lectures. More than 90% of the gods in the divine realm had attended his lectures. And that supreme divinity Qianyu, who looked exactly like Lone Moon, was the only human god that ascended from the immortal realm and became a supreme divinity. Speaking of which, Father Nyo, you look different from how you look on television. Shining glanced at him suspiciously. As a well-known citizen's father who would bring money every time he asked for it, she still had some impression of him. What's with that look? Lone Moon rolled his eyes at her. Keep that expression of suspicion that I've gone through plastic surgery. She did not mention plastic surgery. The reason why I look different from before is because when I ascended to the nascent soul stage, I went through a body purification. Lone Moon waved the fan in his hand and said with some pride, I'm not your chef. I don't have a natural sore body. That's why I could only take advantage of the nascent soul heavenly tribulation to use the lightning tribulation to refine my body and cleanse my meridians. Of course I look different. Oh, Shining thought about the girls of the Rainbow Sect. Indeed, after going through the lightning tribulation, they all looked different. They even learned to transform. The way I look now is the way I look at the beginning after I purify the impurities in my body. Lone Moon's expression was serious as he said word by word. My old man was born this handsome. All right, where's your shame? Chapter 262. As for why that Qianyu looks exactly like me, I don't know either. Perhaps it was a coincidence? Lone Moon frowned, suddenly remembering something. Shening, don't you think? He was just about to speak when Bai Zhe suddenly appeared beside the two of them, looking at Shening eagerly. Shun, Ing, come here. What's the matter? Shening lay on the table, not wanting to move. Did something happen to Shorty? Lone Moon stood up anxiously. Shorty had been soaking in the spirit spring for 3 days, and there was still no movement. No, she's fine. She can come out tomorrow. Now that it was Lone Moon's turn, his speech became smoother. There's just a place that I want to bring Shun Ing over to have a look. I'm not going. Shun Ing rejected immediately. She was not interested in anything that required movement. Bai Zhe froze and looked at her anxiously. Suddenly remembering something, he took out a bag and handed it over. Here. What? Shun Ing took it. The moment she pulled it open, something slid out. It was a long, slippery, and wet body. It fell on the table with a thud and kept twisting. What the hell? Could this be an octopus? Lone Moon poked the claw on the table with his fan. It's a 1,000-clawed beast, Bai Zhe replied, and turned to look at Shun Ing with a blushing face. Can I eat it? Nodding furiously, he thought for a moment and added, There are a lot of them, Father Nyo. Shun Ying's eyes brightened. It was written all over her face. Think, think, think. Seafood, seafood, seafood. For all, if you want to go, you go. I'm not going. Lone Moon glared at Foodie Shun. I don't want to help you carry your things. You should have said so earlier. Let's go. Shining stood up quickly, grabbed by Zay, and rushed out without looking back. I haven't had seafood in a long time. Wait. Lone Moon called out anxiously. Don't forget what we just said. Now got it. A reply came from the other side, and the figure completely disappeared. Lone Moon narrowed his eyes and sat back down. A while later, a certain chef walked out with a dish in each hand. He glanced at the empty seat and was stunned for a moment. Where's Master? He didn't even eat lunch. This was the first time. Lone Moon looked up at him. He was abducted by an octopus. I Ching's face darkened. Why didn't you stop, Master? Why should I stop her? Lone Moon asked in return. He looked at Chef, who looked like he wanted to kill someone. Something flashed across his eyes, and he sighed. AI, a grown girl, can't be kept at home. Instantly, I Ching's face darkened. He wanted to kill beasts. Bai Zhe brought Shunning to a huge lake. The lake water was so clear that one could see the bottom, like a sapphire falling onto the ground. The lake was so big that one couldn't even see the end of it. Furball, how do we catch it? Shen Ying's eyes brightened as a list of aquatic products flashed across her mind. Should I drain the water? Bai Zhe was stunned by her sparkling eyes. He blushed again and turned his head away as if he was scalded. Wait a minute. As he spoke, he took 2 quick steps and stopped at the side of the water. He conjured a seal, and a light flashed. A series of bubbles appeared on the surface of the lake. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the water. A middle-aged man floated on the surface of the water. He was dressed in black, but his lower body had octopus legs covered with suction cups. This was that octopus? Thousand Claws greets the supreme divinity. The man bowed respectfully to Bai Zhe and swam to the shore while twisting his numerous legs. Bai Zhe nodded and regained his cold demeanor. He stretched out his hand and said, Give it to me. Supreme divinity, you finally made up your mind to clean up the demonic beasts in this lake. Thousand Legs was overjoyed and excited. Thousand Leaf Lake was just below White Cloud Mountain. Many demonic beasts had appeared in the water. Although they were all mutated aquatic beasts without sentience, there were too many of them. What's more, they would occasionally attack the gremlins that passed by. As time went by, no one dared to come here anymore. Some people begged the Supreme Divinity to help, but for some reason, the Supreme Divinity could not make up his mind to clean them up. He only sent Thousand Legs to guard the lake to prevent the demonic beasts from hurting people. Now that the Supreme Divinity finally decided to get involved, Thousand Legs felt energized. He hurriedly stretched out his hand and plucked a strand of hair. The strand of hair instantly turned into a wriggling octopus leg. He handed it over with both hands. Supreme Divinity, I'm ready. Bai Zhe took it and turned to hand it to Shunning. Fishing. How? Shunning glanced at the octopus leg that was thicker than a thigh. She only knew how to eat. This leg was suitable for barbecuing. Exalted Goddess. Thousand Legs hurriedly explained, Demonic beasts are most familiar with my aura. As long as you throw this into the water, you will naturally be able to lure them out. Shunning took the octopus leg and turned to ask, Won't it hurt? Although he had many legs. Thousand Legs laughed. Exalted Goddess, you worry too much. This is formed from my hair. It only carries my aura. It's not a real leg. Oh. She threw it into the water and instantly flew a few hundred meters away. Just as it was about to fall into the water, the originally calm lake's surface suddenly turned into a huge wave. Tens of huge black fish broke through the water. Their green scales shone with a golden light when the sun shone on them. The one at the front bit the octopus leg and fell into the water. As if they had discovered the people on the shore, they turned and rushed over. The waves on the lake were instantly more than 100 feet high. One could faintly see hundreds of pairs of blood-red eyes staring at them. Oh no, it's actually a school of green, sand demonic fish. Thousand Legs was shocked. This type of demonic fish usually lived in schools. There were tens to hundreds of them in a school. They were huge and very ferocious. Supreme Divinity, why don't we? Before he could finish, Bai Zhe just raised his hand and waved. In an instant, Tens of thousands of wind blades flew toward the waves and hit the school of demonic fish. In the next moment, the huge wave subsided. A school of human-sized fish floated on the surface of the lake. 1,000 legs, as expected of a supreme divinity. Shining had already rushed over excitedly to pick up the fish. She grabbed one fish with each hand. There were so many fish. She had to get Chef to boil them, steam them, roast them, and grill them one by one. Furball, this method of yours is really effective. Baize's face turned red. He hurriedly followed and then silently took out a storage bag and handed it over. Xinying's eyes lit up. She took it and patted his shoulder hard. With a serious expression, she said, "I like people like you who know what to do." With that said, she opened the storage bag and started stuffing fish into it. Baize's entire body froze. The redness on his face and his black hair were instantly dyed red. He vaguely felt something explode, and his mind went blank. She just said like. Oh, asterisk. Q after a long time. He finally replied in a low voice, "Me too." Chapter 263. Shining had collected most of the fish. The storage bag that Furball gave her seemed to be especially big. Even after collecting more than 100 fish, it was still not full. "Furball, are there any other aquatic products?" The man, who had been frozen for a long time, finally regained his composure and nodded. "Yes." With that said, he flew up into the sky, clenched his fist by his side, and reached out to Shining. "I'll bring you there." "All right." Shining jumped onto the cloud. "Let's go." Baize retracted his hand in disappointment. Shining turned to 1,000 legs. "That a fish bait? Octopus? What's that again?" "1,000 legs," Baize reminded. "Oh, brother 1,000 legs. Let's go. Don't fall behind." 1,000 legs, she called him fish bait just now. She definitely did, right? Supreme divinity, are you really here to clean up the aquatic demonic beasts? But why are you collecting the corpses of the demonic beasts? Some demonic beasts that don't even have inner cores are useless to bring back. 1,000 legs followed her with a confused look. But the same thing happened again. He pulled out his hair to attract the demonic beasts, and then the supreme divinity killed them. The two of them happily went down to pick up the corpses, and they didn't even ask for his help. This happened many times until they went around the entire lake. 1,000 legs suddenly had a scary guess. Supreme divinity didn't clean up the demonic beasts in the lake all these years. Was she purposely keeping them so that this exalted goddess could come and pick up the corpses? No, my supreme divinity definitely doesn't have such a hobby. It must be an illusion. An hour later, supreme divinity, 1,000 legs said weakly, "Why don't we stop here for today?" Baize finally turned to look at him. "Are the demonic beasts in the lake all gone?" No. The demonic beasts are not all gone, but I'm almost done pulling out my hair." Pulling out 1 or 2 strands of hair at a time was nothing. It didn't affect his cultivation, and he usually lost quite a lot of hair. But he couldn't keep pulling it out. If this went on, he would really go bald. Baize, Shining glanced at his obviously shiny head and coughed. "Then let's go back. Chef should be done cooking." "All right." Baize turned to fly back. "Wait." Shining suddenly spoke. She divided the storage bags in her hands into 3 equal portions and handed them to 1,000 legs. "Here, yours." 1,000 legs glanced at the bag with a dumbfounded expression. What was this for? Dismemberment? Or a threat? The 1,000 claws is from the water tribe. These demonic beasts do not have spiritual intelligence and do not have inner dawn, so they are useless to him, Baize explained. "So, he doesn't eat seafood?" Shining paused. After thinking for a while, she reached into her pocket and took out a pearl. She handed it to 1,000 legs and said, "Why don't I give you this? Chef gave it to me. He has no use for it, but you should be able to use it." This is a dragon ball." 1,000 Claw's eyes widened and he rubbed his eyes. Only a natural-born true dragon would be born with a dragon pearl, which was used for inheritance. Although the divine power inside the dragon pearl was no longer useful to the dragon tribe, it was a treasure to the other water tribe. Although the water tribe had the possibility of cultivating to become a true dragon, not everyone had this opportunity. With the dragon pearl, things would be much easier. Exalted, exalted goddess, you really want to give it to me? Thousand Legs was stunned by this huge surprise. You don't want it? Chef said that the pearl was very bright and useful, so he gave her a few. There was still a pile of them. Thousand Legs immediately bowed. Thank you, exalted goddess. Here, Shun Ying stuffed the pearl into his hands. Thousand Legs was very touched. Indeed, the supreme divinity knew all good gods. Exalted goddess, don't worry, your hair will grow back. Shun Ying thought about it and added, Hair. Could she not mention hair? Goodbye, brother Fishbait. He really wasn't called Fishbait. Baizé did not stay any longer. He took Shun Ying and flew away on a cloud. He was extremely fast. In a moment, he had already flown across the entire lake and was flying towards the top right corner. Halfway there, he suddenly thought of something and said hesitantly, I have a pearl too. Do you want it? Oh, can it glow? No, it can. Then I don't want it. Baizé lowered his head sadly. Furball. Are you lost? They did not fly for so long when they just arrived. Baizé stiffened. A hint of panic flashed across his face. After a while, he said, No. Oh, Shun Ying did not mind. She continued to look at the bag of aquatic products with satisfaction. Baizé heaved a sigh of relief. With a thought, he sped up and flew upward. In a short while, he saw the hall in the clouds. They had come out from the front hall, but now they were at the back of the mountain. He brought Shun Ying directly to a place in the back palace that was covered by auspicious clouds. This was a sea of flowers. Pure white, jade-like flowers were blooming all over the place. Each flower seemed to be exquisitely carved, and they even carried a faintly discernible fragrance. The flowers were surrounded by thick god power. It was almost tangible. From afar, it looked like they were blooming on a blue god power. Do you like it? Baizé asked nervously. He looked straight into Shun Ying's eyes, as if this was a very important question. What? Shun Ying was a little curious why he suddenly stopped flying. She looked at the sea of flowers in front of her and realized that he was asking about flowers. It's all right. Ever since Invincible Sect planted a radish that liked to give people dandelions, she had a strange feeling when she saw all the flowers. So much so that she had the illusion that the ground was full of radishes, and they were the kind that were naked. This is a black spirit flower. His eyes became even brighter, as if his eyes were filled with stars. After I came back, I planted a lot. For you. Oh, what did it have to do with him going home for dinner? Baizé's face was already completely red. He tried his best to resist the urge to turn around. Suddenly, as if he had made up his mind about something, he bent down and picked the prettiest flower and handed it over. Shun Ying. For me? Yes. He nodded vigorously. His eyes became even brighter. He looked at her closely, as if afraid of missing something. Even the hand that was holding the flower was trembling. For you. Shun Ying subconsciously reached out. Just as she was about to take it, her hand suddenly stopped less than half a centimeter away from the flower. She tilted her head and asked, Furball, yes, this flower isn't for you to propose to me, is it? Oh, Q-boom. There was a faint sound of something exploding. 4 hours later, the moon was in the middle of the sky, in the side palace of White Cloud Mountain. A certain someone summoned a sword that was overflowing with cold chi. His whole body exploded with a strong, murderous aura. I'm going to kill that little bitch. I Ching turned and rushed out. Chapter 264. Holy shit. Chef, what are you doing? Lonmun's eyes and hands were sharp, and he pulled him back. Move aside. Let me kill that little bitch who dared to flirt with Master. I Ching's murderous aura seemed to be uncontrollable. He began to attack indiscriminately. If Lonmun was not prepared, he would have knocked Lonmun away. What's the rush? At least listen to what I have to say. Lonmun used a spell to press I Ching back into the chair. He turned to glare at the person in question who was calmly eating her fruit. And then? Did you agree to Baizé? No. Shun Ying shook her head. Lonmun heaved a sigh of relief. I Ching also relaxed. You rejected him? Not really. What the hell? The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. When did you learn to flirt with such a green tea bee asterisk TCH's skills? I wanted to say it, but after I said that, he covered his face and ran away, abandoning me. Shining looked innocent. She ran like a rabbit, the red kind. I couldn't even stop him. I walked around for a long time before I found my way back. She didn't even make it for lunch. Lone Moon. So this was the reason why she missed lunch and could only make it for dinner? Because she spent 4 hours to find her way back. Chef, is dinner ready? Shining looked at I Ching. She walked around the back hall for the whole afternoon. She was so hungry. Master. Unexpectedly, Chef did not turn and rush into the kitchen for the first time. Instead, he said seriously, "You must not agree to this. You are pure and do not know the human heart. Divine hearts are sinister. Don't be fooled by Bai Zhe. Although he did help us, you were the one who helped him return to the divine realm. That's repayment." She just wanted to eat. Master, we just arrived in the divine realm. We don't know much about this place. Don't trust people easily. The more I Ching spoke, the more serious he became. What's more, you've only known him for a few days, and he's already willing to marry you. It's obvious that he's a frivolous person. But dinner, how long have you known him? It's too rash to decide to marry him so casually. And he's a divine being. Don't you always say that different races cannot fall in love? Dinner, I don't think there are many good people in the God world. The God race isn't reliable at all. Look at Feng San and Long Zhun. Just because of a small misunderstanding, they could suspect each other for tens of thousands of years. It can be seen that they are not sentimental people by nature. Shining, Lone Moon, you even ridiculed yourself. Does your family know? Besides, with Master's high cultivation, how could a mere Bai Zhe of the God race be worthy of you? In any case, I don't agree to this. I won't let anyone get close to you. His face was serious, and he gripped the sword in his hand tightly, as if he was about to rush out and kill someone. Shining paused and turned to look at this righteous man. Her eyes darkened. I Ching, Master, why don't you like people approaching me? I Ching paused, as if he had been asked the right question. A moment later, he murmured, "Because you are my master." Oh, she narrowed her eyes. What if I'd taken a few more disciples? No. I Ching's expression changed as he blurted out. Why? Because... He did not want to, but he could not bring himself to say the last few words. His entire person was stunned. He felt a sense of panic in his heart, as if something that he had deliberately ignored was about to surge out and drown him. Lone Moon, who had been sitting at the side watching the show, shook his head and sighed. He could not help but step forward and pat a certain fool's shoulder. All right, you must be tired after looking for her for the whole day. Go back and rest. Don't worry. Who in this world can trick your master? She knows what she's doing. I Ching stared blankly at Lone Moon, then at Shining. He was chased out with a confused look on his face. He did not seem to have recovered at all. Like a wandering spirit, he walked in the direction of his residence. Lone Moon then glanced sideways at a certain person who was sprawled on the table lazily. What you're doing is a little unkind. Shining glanced at him. Unkind if I don't say. He choked, as if thinking of something. His expression changed. All right, that's even more unkind. Then what are you thinking? I can't be bothered to think about that. You are really too lazy. Laziness was out of style. Shining swirled the teacup in her hand and murmured softly. Who asked the holidays to be ending soon? What? Nothing, Father Nyo. Do you really not have any hidden food? Daughter, I'm so hungry. Get lost. I don't have a lazy daughter like you. No matter what you decide, I'm not going to interfere in this matter. You can handle it yourself. Lone Moon pursed his lips. After a while, he added, but take it easy. It's been so many years. Lone Moon then set up an isolation array and closed the door. He sat back at the table. Let's talk business. You went out to observe for a day. How was it? Did you find anything? Did you find out? Shining glanced at him lazily. I guess so. What do you mean by I guess so? Only then did he sit up, and with a flick of his hand, he threw a few bulging storage pouches on the table. What's this? Lone Moon picked one up and subconsciously tore it open. A huge fishtail suddenly shot out from the bag and hit him in the face. There was a loud smack in the room. Lone Moon, where's my knife? Air, there are too many small animals inside. Be careful. Shun Ing hurriedly added. What's the F***king point of saying that now? Lone Moon directly threw the storage bag in his hand back at her face. She did it on purpose. She definitely did it. Don't waste it, Father Nyo. Shun Ing caught it and stuffed the fishtail back. It's not spoiled. It can still be eaten. Where did you catch these things? Lone Moon glared at her. And they're all demonic beasts that can only be barbecued. In the lake at the foot of the mountain. At the foot of the mountain. Lone Moon stood up abruptly. His expression changed. You mean, we guessed correctly. Furball is also problematic. Shun Ing nodded. His cultivation seems to be fine. Maybe he didn't even realize it himself. Lone Moon's expression darkened. His brows were almost in a dead knot. After a moment of silence, he could not help but curse. Shit. This is getting more and more troublesome. What should I do? Should I tell them now? I'm so tired. Shun Ing continued to lean on the table. Indeed, using my brain is so troublesome. Father Nyo, did you really not hide anything? I feel like I'm running out of blood. I need some milk. Get lost. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. You only been out for half a day. Little Shorty should be able to come out from the spirit spring tomorrow. We should still let them know about this. I'll call them over tomorrow. With that said, he removed the isolation array around them. Just as he was about to step out of the room, he stopped. Damn it. He cursed under his breath and turned back to the table. He took out more than 10 bowls of rice, vegetables, pastries, and fruits from his storage bag and placed them all over the table. Leftovers from lunch. Eat, eat, eat. Eat until you die. Oomph. With that said, he turned and left. Shun Ing, Father Nyo's way of doting on his daughter was indeed very special. Chapter 265. After soaking in the spirit spring for 4 whole days, Shorty finally woke up. Lone Moon called out to her and asked her to call by Zay to gather at Shun Ying's side hall. Lone Moon then turned around to look for Chef. Chef looked as if he had not rested well. His little body was listless, as if he had met with some difficult problem. Especially after seeing Shun Ing, he looked as if he wanted to say something, but stopped himself. Even his cooking skills were obviously not as good as before. Lone Moon glanced at the breakfast on the table. This was a table of soulless breakfast. He glanced at a certain someone who was calmly eating. His mouth twitched. Damn it, she was eating with relish. Why did she dislike his cooking so much in the past? He looked around and realized that one person was missing. Where's Bai Zay? Elder, I did not find Supreme Divinity Bai Zay. Shorty answered. I searched the entire Baiyin Mountain and did not see him. Lone Moon's expression turned cold. He glared at a certain foodie and turned to I Ching. Chef, you go. You could do whatever you want. Just bring him here. I Ching, who was still in a daze, his eyes lit up. He was instantly energized. All right. With that said, he disappeared at the door in a flash. He looked very excited. Shorty. Elder I Ching went to look for someone, right? But why did he have to bring a sword and look so murderous? After all, his cultivation was high. Shorty could not find him all over the mountain. Chef brought him back in less than 20 minutes. But both of them were covered in dust and looked very disheveled. Especially Bai Zay. His originally pure white clothes were stained with large patches and his face was green. Coming. Chef muttered and kept his sword. He took small steps and walked behind, shunning out of habit. As if realizing that his vision was blocked, he turned and moved a chair. He climbed onto it and looked over Shun Ying's head. He stared fearfully at Bai Zay, who entered the room. Little bitch, don't you dare light my master. I will keep my eyes on you. Bai Zay, on the other hand, saw Shun Ying sitting in front of him the moment he entered the house. He seemed to have thought of something. His originally angry expression changed instantly, and his face turned red. His entire body was as red as a shrimp. He turned and wanted to fly away. Lone Moon was quick to react. He sealed the door with a spell and set up a few isolation arrays. Hey, that's enough. We have something serious to talk to you about. With that said, he turned to glare at the lazy bum at the table. Shun Ing. What's with Ah? Settle your problem first. Oh. Shining then stood up and walked towards Bai Zai. She looked straight into his eyes and said, "You ran too fast yesterday. I didn't have time to reply to you." Bai Zai's heart skipped a beat. His entire face burned. "Shun, thank you, but I don't accept it." Bai Zai stiffened. The flush on his face instantly faded. "Then I don't like you. I won't like it in the future either. I never loved." Shining patted his shoulder comfortingly. Then, she turned and sat back in her chair. Lone Moon, Xian Tong, this was a heart-wrenching scene? Wasn't it too simple and crude? Xian Tong looked at Lone Moon weakly. "Elder, why do I feel that Supreme Divinity is a little pitiful? It's better to get the pain over with." Shuning rejected him a long time ago. She's experienced. Will he be all right? Don't worry, it's just a breakup. He won't die. And it was a crush. But he looks so sad. He's squatting in the corner. He's petrified. It feels like he's going to be blown away. Is he really all right? Cough. Well, let's talk about serious matters. Lone Moon stepped forward and said seriously. Elder was changing the topic, wasn't he? "Little Shorty, is your primordial spirit all right?" he suddenly asked. Xian Tong nodded. She looked gratefully at the person who was still squatting in the corner. "Supreme Divinity's spirit spring is really amazing. I feel that my primordial spirit is much more condensed than before. Even my cultivation is showing signs of breaking through. I believe we can return to the immortal realm soon." "We can't return to the immortal realm for the time being." Lone Moon's expression darkened. "Because it's not just you who is having problems with your primordial spirit. Chef is also having problems." As soon as he finished speaking, everyone except Shuning was shocked. "What?" Xian Tong stood up abruptly. "Elder I Ching is also injured. How can that be? Isn't he already a divine being? Who can injure?" Why are you all looking at me?" She stopped mid-sentence. She realized that everyone in the room was staring at her with wide eyes. "What's wrong?" "Little Shorty." Lone Moon pointed below her. Xian Tong looked down and saw a familiar body on the table. It was her body, and she was floating in mid-air, completely transparent. How can this be?" Xian Tong screamed. Subconsciously, she scurried back. In an instant, the figure on the table sat up again. Xian Tong's soul had returned. Indeed, there's still a problem with little Shorty's soul. Lone Moon's expression darkened. "That's impossible." Even Bai Zai, who was standing in the corner, was shocked by little Shorty's sudden departure. He turned to look at her. "My spirit spring does have the effect of nourishing souls. I've checked her primordial spirit and confirmed that it has been repaired. Why would her soul leave her body for no reason?" "This has nothing to do with her primordial spirit," Lone Moon said. "It's because her soul is missing a piece." "You mean that remnant soul?" I Ching suddenly thought of the array that Mother Feng had set up. "She is. You and Bai Zai aren't? What do you mean?" "Haven't you realized?" Lone Moon scanned them from head to toe. "That both of your souls are missing something?" Bai Zai, I Ching, Lone Moon's brows furrowed. His expression became even more serious. "Shining, and I only just realized this. At first, we thought that only little Shorty had a problem, especially after we saw the remnant soul in the array in the underworld. But when I examined little Shorty, apart from the fact that her primordial spirit was unstable, I didn't find any problems with her soul. At first, I thought that the remnant soul was left behind before little Shorty was reincarnated. The power of reincarnation restored little Shorty's soul, so it was just a remnant soul from her previous life. But if the soul was complete, the remnant soul should have dissipated," Bai Zai said. "That's right." Lone Moon nodded. "The strange thing is that the remnant soul has existed for more than a day or two. That proves that it wasn't from before she reincarnated. But little Shorty was completely fine until she was injured by the ghost immortals Yin Chi. Then, Shining reminded me that when Chef was in the egg, he also encountered the ghost immortals Yin Chi. That's why I checked on him. Although it wasn't obvious, his primordial spirit was indeed showing signs of disorder. Chapter 266. I Ching paused and instinctively checked his own essence soul. His face paled. I thought it was because of this body of mine. That's why it's the exact opposite. Lone Moon said in a low voice. It's because your soul is incomplete that your body has always been like this. I Ching frowned. His expression darkened. And then there's Bai Zhe, me? Bai Zhe paused. When you fought with Qian Yu that day, we were right beside you. Lone Moon pointed to a certain foodie beside him. She saw that there was something wrong with you, so we decided to follow you back to White Cloud Mountain. Shun. Bai Zhe's heart warmed. He instinctively looked at Shunning. Suddenly, he thought of something and his expression fell again. He exuded an aura of grievance. After a while, he said, but there's nothing wrong with my essence soul. There's nothing wrong with your essence soul, but I'm not sure about the rest. Bai Zhe paused. What did that mean? There are countless demonic beasts in the lake under White Cloud Mountain, right? Lone Moon rolled his eyes at the foodie. Didn't you take Shining to see them yesterday? Those demonic beasts didn't exist before, right? Indeed, they didn't exist before. Do you know where they came from? Bai Zhe paused. I don't know either. They just appeared recently. I remember that back in the Three Azure Realms, you stayed with the Yi family for tens of thousands of years. Lone Moon continued. None of the demonic beasts in the Mirage Sea dared to come ashore. Back in the divine realm, your divine power should be even stronger. Why did demonic beasts dare to appear near your residence? And all of them are low-level demonic beasts with no spiritual intelligence? He didn't think about this problem. At that time, he just wanted to recuperate first. When Shining came over, she would definitely be happy. The only explanation is that there's something wrong with your soul, affecting your powers. It's just that this effect is so small that you didn't notice it at all. Lone Moon poured himself a cup of tea and took a sip before continuing. You're from the divine race. The demonic beasts with spiritual intelligence naturally know how powerful you are and don't dare to come close. And the low-level demonic beasts can only sense danger instinctively. They don't know who you are. The White Spirit Mountain was rich in divine power, making it the best place to cultivate. Now that Bai Zhe's soul was in trouble, these demonic beasts without intelligence would not be able to sense the danger and would naturally swarm over. Bai Zhe fell silent. It was indeed possible. So Shunning went fishing with him yesterday because she was worried, but she said she didn't like him at all. Heartbroken. Elder, you mean to say that all three of us had a strand of our soul extracted, but we didn't notice it? Xian Tong asked worriedly. You are indeed missing a remnant soul, and we have found this remnant soul, but we haven't thought of a way to let it return. But I Ching and Bai Zhe were just guessing. Lone Moon frowned. A remnant soul is different from a complete soul. We can't tell if the soul is complete. I have an idea, Bai Zhe suddenly said. Everyone was stunned. They all turned to look at him. Bai Zhe turned his hand, and a bronze mirror the size of a palm appeared in his hand. This is the life mirror, my lifelong Dharma artifact. Through this mirror, you can see a person's past and present life. But you have to have a complete soul. If you don't have a complete soul, you won't be able to see anything in the mirror. So it could be used to check if they were missing a remnant soul. Lone Moon's eyes lit up. He immediately carried Chef down from the stool. Then let's take a look. I Ching was not paying attention and was squeezed in front of the mirror. He and Bai Zhe glared at each other at close range, then looked at the mirror. Bai Zhe immediately activated the life mirror in his hand. A white light flashed across the surface of the mirror, but it was completely white inside. Only Father Nyo's reflection could be seen. His hand was still empty. In an instant, the three of them's expressions darkened. Indeed, they guessed correctly. Bai Zhe and Chef's souls were in trouble. The three of us have interacted with the ghost immortal. It must be done by the same person. Xian Tong looked worried. But why did he want to extract our remnant souls? Remnant souls were not like complete souls and spirits. If they were missing, it would not have much effect on the body. Over time, they would recover on their own. It might not be the three of you. Shining, who had been silent all this while, suddenly spoke. There are others who have interacted with the ghost immortal. Everyone was stunned. I Ching, who was still in Lone Moon's hand, was the first to react. His eyes widened. Those two drama queens. His expression darkened. A look of panic flashed across his face. He hurriedly looked at the person in front of the table. Master, let's go. Shining patted her butt and stood up. I'm full. Breakfast. The three of them exchanged glances, then turned and began to fly on their swords. Bai Zhe and Xiantong could only follow, confused. Elder Lone Moon, who are the drama queens? Xiantong could not help but ask. Chef's cheap parents. Elder I Ching's ancestor's surname was Drama. Didn't divine race have family surnames? She had never heard of Drama. What Shining said was not impossible. If Little Shorty and the others had lost a sliver of their remnant souls because they had interacted with the Ghost Immortal, then Feng San, who had made friends with the Ghost Immortal, could have interacted with them before. He was familiar with Zhu Ming and had been to the underworld more than once. There was also Long Zhan. Although she had never met a Ghost Immortal, she had guarded the dragon egg for so many years. She did not even sense the Yin Qi in the egg. If the Ghost Immortal had really taken her remnant soul, she should not have known. Reality proved that they were not thinking too much. Feng San and Long Zhan did not appear in Bai Zhe's life mirror at all. How can this be? Long Zhan was confused. With her and Feng San's cultivation levels, how could anyone take away their souls without them knowing? Even if it was just a remnant soul. From what I know, Ghost Immortals are all very strong. Ordinary divine race members are not their match. But given Little Zhan's and my cultivation levels, we can fight them to a draw. Feng San said in a low voice, but there is no Ghost Immortal who is much stronger than us and can take away a sliver of our remnant souls. Why did we? He looked confused. If I Ching, the son who ran away with his master, had not suddenly returned to tell them this, they would not even have known that they had lost a sliver of their remnant souls. Can't you guess who did it? Lone Moon asked anxiously. The two exchanged a look and shook their heads. Their expressions darkened. We don't know. What's more, why would the other party want a sliver of our remnant souls? Do you have a way to find your remnant souls? Lone Moon asked. After all, they were divine race members. The two shook their heads. A remnant soul is different from the 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls. We did not even notice that a sliver of our remnant soul was missing. How can we find its location? But we can ask someone what the other party wants a remnant soul for, Feng San suddenly said. Everyone was stunned. Bai Zhe suddenly thought of something. You mean Hong Yu? That's right. Feng San nodded. Supreme Divinity Hong Yu is the oldest god in the divine realm. If there's anyone who knows the most about souls, it's probably him. Long Zhan reacted as well. Then let's go to Ling Time Mountain immediately. As she spoke, she was about to turn when the air in the hall suddenly twisted. It was as if someone had torn space apart. A black figure suddenly appeared in the hall. Chapter 267. Brother Feng, I have an urgent matter that I need your help with. The person who broke through the void was Zhu Ming. He looked at Feng San anxiously. Brother Zhu? You are. Feng San hesitated. He did not expect Zhu Ming to appear so suddenly and in such a manner. Although breaking through the void could allow one to travel thousands of miles in an instant, it took a lot of energy to do so. Unless it was a matter of life and death, Ghost Immortals would not use it easily. Zhu Ming, on the other hand, looked anxious. Brother Feng, may I ask where the 3 people who entered the underworld the last time are now? He stopped mid-sentence. Then he saw Shun Ying and the others standing at the side. His eyes brightened, and he immediately turned and cupped his fists. That's great. Everyone is here. Mother Feng. Something happened to Mother Feng. What happened to her? Lone Moon stepped forward and asked, shocked. I don't know what happened either. Her soul suddenly became very unstable. Zhu Ming's expression was one of panic. He scanned the area before his gaze landed on Shun Ying. Exalted Goddess, please save Mother Feng. He had already noticed that this exalted goddess Shun's cultivation level was not as low as it seemed on the surface. If anyone could save Mother Feng, it would be them. He had no other choice, which was why he had come here. Shun Ying and Lone Moon exchanged a look. They decided to go and take a look. After all, the fact that they were missing a remnant soul probably had something to do with Mother Feng. Let's go and take a look at Mother Feng first. Lone Moon instructed Feng San and Long Zhen. I'll have to trouble you two divine supremacies to go to the Ling Time Mountain and ask about the remnant soul first. The two of them looked at them worriedly. But you? Feng San looked confused. He did not understand why Zhu Ming did not come here to ask for his help, but to look for his son's seemingly weak master. He wanted to stop them, but Long Zhen glared at him. He swallowed his words. Thank you, everyone. Seeing that they had agreed, Zhu Ming hurriedly thanked them. Then, he anxiously led them across the void. The few of them felt their vision darken. The next moment, they found themselves in the underworld. Ghostly chi filled the air, and wandering souls were everywhere. In front of them was an unfamiliar palace surrounded by thick in chi. It was obvious that this was Zhu Ming's residence. However, half of the originally tall hall had collapsed. From time to time, sharp and ear-piercing screams could be heard, and the red light of the array formation could be faintly seen inside. Mother Feng is inside, Zhu Ming said anxiously as he led everyone in. Only then did they see that the inside of the hall had been destroyed even more severely. There were broken walls everywhere, and only a restrictive array formation was lit up at the very center. The person in the formation was Mother Feng. She had reverted to her crazy self and was attacking the formation that trapped her. Her eyes were bloodshot and her face was contorted in pain. More importantly, there were 9 Mother Fengs in the formation, and from time to time, they would let out cries of resentment, hatred, and anger. The force of their attacks on the formation was getting stronger and stronger, and the formation was on the verge of collapsing. Mother Feng, Zhu Ming exclaimed. He immediately went forward and conjured a seal to stabilize the array. Her soul was split. Lone Moon was shocked. He turned to look at Zhu Ming. What happened? Logically speaking, souls should be connected to each other. As long as they weren't in the soul-splitting formation, they should be able to gather together. Why did Mother Feng seem to be getting more and more scattered? I don't know either. She suddenly became like this. No matter what I did, her soul could not gather together. I could only trap her here, Zhu Ming explained as he set up the array. He looked at Shan Ying pleadingly. I had no choice but to trouble all of you. Last time, all of you were able to destroy the soul-splitting formation. Can you tell what happened to Mother Feng this time? Lone Moon frowned. We can't tell what happened to her either. Mother Feng was different from Chef and the others. What she lacked was a primary soul, not a remnant soul. Zhu Ming looked disappointed. He became even more anxious. Inside the array, Mother Feng's attacks were getting weaker and weaker. Perhaps she was tired, or perhaps her scattered soul could no longer withstand the torment. But the shrill cries were getting louder and louder. They seemed to be filled with hatred and indignation. Every word reverberated in the eerie underworld. I hate you. Why did you do this to me? Why? Heaven fall, yellow springs, to be together forever. Ha ha, liars, all liars. I won't die. I won't die. Even if I become a ghost forever and never reincarnate, I will drag you down to hell with me. The great Tao is heartless. Cutting off one's emotions to gain enlightenment is all a lie. Give me back my life. Give it back to me. The cries were getting louder and louder. Suddenly, black chi appeared around Mother Feng's translucent soul. It did not look like the yin chi of a ghost immortal, nor did it look like demonic chi. It was filled with anger, as if it wanted to destroy everything in its path. Grievous energy. Zhu Ming's eyes widened in disbelief. How is this possible? Although those who were able to cultivate to the level of ghost immortal had died with great resentment, this was the underworld. The Yin River of the underworld would take away all the resentment of ghosts, preventing them from falling into madness. Therefore, ghost immortals would not easily leave the underworld. But Mother Feng's soul had already split. Why would she still have so much grievous energy? Zhu Ming's eyes widened. Suddenly, he thought of something. His face turned even paler. Could it be that she still can't let it go? There's one less soul inside, Tong suddenly exclaimed. Everyone was shocked. They turned around to take a closer look. Indeed, only 8 of the original 9 mother phone were left. The grievous energy around the soul was getting stronger and stronger. In a short while, all 5 of them were covered in a thick, black, grievous energy. It was gathering towards the center, as if some invisible force was pulling it apart. Grievous energy gathering souls, Baizé said in shock. The grievous energy was gathering her scattered souls. No, Mother Phone will be swallowed by the grievous energy. Zhu Ming looked even more worried. He conjured a few hand seals, but there was no reaction. On the other side, Mother Fang's scattered souls had completely gathered together. The raging cries had also stopped. Mother Phone was dressed in a long black robe. Her hair was messy as she stood in the middle of the array. 2 streaks of bloody tears flowed down her cheeks. She suddenly quietened down. Her madness was gone. They did not know if it was an illusion, but the red light in her eyes seemed to have grown brighter. His eyes were fixed on this side. Suddenly, he grinned and revealed a sinister smile. Mother Phone. Zhu Ming subconsciously took a step forward. The smile on Mother Fang's face widened until the corners of her mouth reached her ears. Her eyes bulged so much that they looked like they were about to pop out of her eye sockets. A creepy laugh suddenly sounded. He. You're an accomplice too. All of you deserve to die. Give me back my life, will you, little junior brother? You remember? Zhu Ming's eyes widened. He froze. Mother Phone waved her sleeves. The grievous energy filled the air, accompanied by shrill cries, rushed towards Zhu Ming. Even the yin qi around them was pushed back. It looked like it was about to swallow Zhu Ming whole. Zhu Ming, Lone Moon exclaimed. He sent a beam of sword qi at Zhu Ming, pushing him away. That was how he managed to avoid the grievous energy. The ground rumbled. The palace that was already in ruins was now a pile of rubble. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.